Good evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Everyone, it is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. Let me make sure this is all working here. I think it is. Are we good? I think we're good. We are here to bring you some live coverage of this big Supreme Court ruling that happened earlier today. Sometimes with the Supreme Court rulings, I kind of like to wait a little while before reporting on them because they're complex things. They're difficult to understand. I certainly don't understand them right away, and I like to give it a little time. So we're coming on a little later today, which has allowed me a little time to look into it. And we're going to bring you live coverage, get you an update on the important ruling today. Also, we'll show you President Trump did a news conference today about this ruling. We will certainly show that to you in a little bit. So, but this is not a ruling that just affects President Trump. It is not a ruling. It did not, while it may impact his executive order on birthright citizenship, it did not rule on that order. This Supreme Court ruling is about whether federal judges can basically say of a presidential policy, you got to put that on hold for the entire country. Whether they can issue a nationwide injunction that puts a presidential a policy the president has proposed, whether a judge can basically stop that nationwide until it goes through the court system and gets ruled on. And that is something that has been used by judges to stop policies, not just of President Trump, but also of President Biden, and I believe previous presidents as well. But President Biden had a number of policies that he tried to put into place where a single judge, federal judge, said, nope, you can't do that in the entire country. So there's been this debate going on about these nationwide injunctions. That's what the ruling is about. It's about the power of judges, federal judges, district court judges, I believe, so not the Supreme Court, but the power of a lower federal judge to block a policy the president is trying to implement, to block it for the entire country. So this is going to impact not only President Trump's policy implementation, but also it's going to impact the judges' abilities to limit, at least temporarily, the policies not just of President Trump, but of other presidents. There could be a Democratic, I assume at some point in the future there will be a Democratic president, and federal judges will be limited on the kind of injunctions they can use to stop the policies of that Democratic president as well. So this applies to all future, the relationship between judges and all future presidents, not just President Trump. So, all right, we're going to bring you some live coverage of this, and we're going to again go over the details. And hold on a moment here. We're going to go over the details, and we're going to take your comments on the air, and we're going to watch what President Trump had to say about this. Okay, so we are going to bring you live coverage, and I want to thank our moderators who are here. Thank you to Beezy and Roberts Mayqueen and Janet B. They're all moderating over there on YouTube. Thank you so much, Ruth. There's this weird thing. It seems that YouTube has added suddenly numbers to the mods' names. And I don't know if it's lots of people's names, but definitely the mods' names now have letters and numbers after them. I have no idea why that is. I just know. What's going on with that? Mods, did you notice that? I don't know what's happening. Anyways. I don't know what it means. Yeah, that seems like a new thing. Hold on a second here. Give me one moment here. Then I'm going to thank the rest of our moderators. Okay, thanks to also our moderators over there on Twitch. We have moderating right now. Hey, our new moderator, Bot King Sentient, is over there on Twitch. Thanks, Bot King Sentient, for helping us out on Twitch. Also, Matthew Kohai 3 and McBritches are moderating over there. Thank you. Thanks to our Facebook moderators as well. We have, I'll tell you in a second, Facebook takes forever sometimes these days. Linda Bell, Larry, and Misha moderate for us on X. So let's get into this. You know, it's again, now this is going to be more of I would say a technical, complex stream than our normal stream, because these Supreme Court rulings can get really complex. They are really complex. I'll post a link to the ruling in the chat, but if you, like me, are not a legal specialist, you're going to have a hard time reading through that ruling and understand most of what's going on. So, you know, I always say this when we cover Supreme Court cases. They're complex legal rulings. So I would certainly be wary of people who sum this up in 2 sentences and act like that's it. And it's as simple as that, because it's not as simple as that. So I'm not going to try to get really into too much in the nuts and bolts of the legal stuff, because I can't, but I'll try to do my best to give you a basic idea of what's going on. But just know that it is a complex ruling here. Often with these rulings, they get summarized. I would say they get oversimplified in the summary. All right, let me just, I'll actually post a link to the ruling in the chat. That's what I'll do. And then you can look at it if you'd like. Okay, I just did. Hey, thanks to Margaret Riley, who's moderating, and Kay Lowry Body, moderating over there on Facebook. Hey, thanks Kristen McConnell Gates for the Facebook stars. I owe a couple other quick thank yous here to start. Kristen McConnell Gates, thanks for the stars. And thanks to, hold on a moment here, Mitchell Pilot, who says he's going to refer to the mods by their number. I don't know why they have numbers now. It's very strange. I hadn't heard about that. Thanks to Shaft. Oh, now I think some of the viewers, I believe on YouTube, some of the viewers might have numbers at the end of their names too, because I didn't know Shaft as Shaft 4480. Viewers on YouTube, am I right about this? Do some of you have numbers that you didn't have before in your names? It seems like some do. Some of them are saying yes. Some of our YouTube viewers are saying they have numbers at the end of their names. And I don't know why. I'm looking in the chat. It's very, very strange. Just all these people have numbers at the end. Maybe it's a YouTube mistake or something. Because I hadn't noticed this before. All right. Anyways, so I still know who Shaft is. Instead of Shaft 4480. Shaft says it's using my government name. Anyways, things are a little strange over there at the YouTube chat right now, but whatever. We'll power forward. Hey, thanks to Lula A. Bell, and I can't. Well, actually, no. I think it's. Oh, see, it's weird. I think Tallulah A. Bell maybe has a different name now, but and they changed her name. Thanks, Dodger Blue. 2 years member, thank you. And J.K. Floyd, 5906, thank you. All right. It says Swan Shovlin. Thank you. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that right now. Oh, somebody said it changed to people's usernames. I don't know if it's people's usernames and not their channel or what's going on. So there's some kind of, we're not going to worry about it right now, but just know that the names in the YouTube chat, I think, are different than what they normally are. Some people are saying they have a new name. Step 1 said I have a new name. All right, so, okay. All right, let's get into this. Let's get into this now. Let's get into this ruling. Oh, and you know what? I should have said this before, but so a lot of focus today about this ruling has been on President Trump's executive order about birthright citizenship. So at the start of his term, President Trump issued an executive order saying that no longer would people so the way it's been in this country, I believe over 100 years, is that the accepted legal opinion has been that the Constitution says that if you are born on U.S. soil, and I believe you're not born to a diplomat, you, just by being born on U.S. soil, become a citizen. President Trump issued an executive order that basically said, like, well, we're not allowing that anymore, and you need to have a parent be a citizen or, I believe, a legal permanent resident. So, for example, if under President Trump's executive order, if two people were here in the country not legally, and they had a baby here on American soil, under his executive order, that would not be a U.S. citizen. Whereas for the previous over 100 years, the accepted legal opinion was that that person was a citizen. So I feel comfortable in saying the large majority of legal opinion I have seen believes that President Trump's executive order will ultimately get overturned because it's not constitutional, because it goes against the accepted constitutional accepted legal interpretation in this country of the Constitution. But that remains to be seen. But what happened is, with this policy, a federal judge, I believe multiple federal judges, but a single federal judge said, hey, that order isn't constitutional, and issued an injunction so that President Trump's executive order could not be applied around the country, a nationwide injunction preventing that policy from going into place around the country. So now, and I believe this particular case that the Supreme Court ruled on was about those injunctions about this policy. But what the Supreme Court did is they didn't rule about whether President Trump's executive order was constitutional. This ruling has nothing to do about whether President Trump's President Trump's order saying, no, you have to have roughly speaking, you have to have a parent be a citizen or a legal permanent resident to have the baby be a citizen automatically by being born on American soil. They don't rule on the constitutionality of that. What the Supreme Court said today is the injunctions that federal judges issued, district court judges, I believe, that said, hey, this new policy declared by President Trump, it cannot be applied across the country. The Supreme Court today said, like, no, district judges, you don't have the power to say that. You don't have the power, according to the Constitution, the Supreme Court said, according to U.S. law, I guess Constitution plus U.S. law, that based on top of the Constitution. Either way, the Supreme Court said, district judges, you do not have the legal power to just say, President Trump's order cannot apply anywhere in the country, and to anybody. And I believe what the focus is they said, like, you can only grant relief to the parties to the actual lawsuit. So somebody filed a lawsuit that these district judges ruled on. And basically, as I understand it, and I'll show you some articles here, the Supreme Court said, well, if somebody sued, somebody sued the federal government and said, hey, I'm getting hurt because of President Trump's executive order, the district judge could say, okay, well, that executive order is not going to apply to this person who sued, but they can't say it's not going to apply to anybody in the country automatically. So I know this is already sounding complex, and this is just me like drastically oversimplifying things, but I'm just trying to get the thing to keep in mind is that this ruling was about the power of judges to issue nationwide injunctions to stop a presidential policy from applying to anybody in the country. But also you should know, this ruling does not stop all nationwide injunctions. It says there are certain cases in which a judge could legally issue a nationwide injunction. I know it's already getting crazy, I know, and very technical. So, but I mean, hopefully this gives you a bit of a sense of the complexity of the ruling. And it's not just some simple thing you can sum up in one sentence. All right. So anyways, I'm trying to do this as simply as possible. I'm not a legal expert. I don't get the whole thing. I can't read through the Supreme Court ruling and understand most of what's there, but I'm giving you a basic idea of what's going on. So bottom line though, bottom line. Now, before today, there were several judges who had issued rulings saying President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order could not be applied anywhere in the United States to anybody. Now those rulings have been declared unconstitutional. So now it looks like in some of the country, President Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship can start to be enforced. But remember that executive order is still going through the courts. So as I understand it, eventually the Supreme Court might rule on that executive order and say it's constitutional or it's not constitutional. But it looks like there's at least going to be a temporary period of time, not permanent, at least temporary. I don't know how long, months, years, until the Supreme Court rules on it. But there's going to be a temporary period of time in the United States where in some of the country, a child will no longer be a citizen just by being born on U.S. soil if, for example, their parents are both in the U.S. illegally. Now, just so you know, that temporary period of time, I think it only starts in 30 days, and then there could be other court rulings that make it so that Trump's executive order does not go into effect. So it's not really clear right now what's going to happen, but it's possible that for some period of time, at least, in some part of the country, President Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship will go into effect. And at least in those parts of the country, a baby won't be a citizen just by virtue of being born on U.S. soil if, for example, they have two parents who are here illegally. I know this is very complex. I'm doing my best to keep it as simple as possible. But there's all these different factors and everything, and complicating circumstances. And also, this applies to other executive orders of President Trump. There are other policies that President Trump has tried to implement that some federal judges have issued nationwide injunctions against. Orders that said, no, this policy of President Trump cannot apply anywhere in the country to anybody. Some of those orders are now going to be seen as unconstitutional. So there might be other policies of President Trump that similarly can apply in some parts of the country, whereas before today there was a judge's order that said they can't apply anywhere. Although those might be temporary too, because they might be ultimately struck down by the courts as unconstitutional. Wow, this is complex. I am trying to make this as simple as possible, and it's still really complex. I'm going to show you a couple articles on this. We're going to take comments on it, but that's what this is about, is the ability of judges to issue nationwide injunctions against a presidential policy. I think it's just against presidential policies, but I might be wrong about that too. So I'm doing my best. Okay. And I do want to repeat this. President Biden also had a number of policies where judges issued nationwide injunctions against stopping his policies. So this will not just impact President Trump. It will not just impact judges. It doesn't just impact judges' ability to issue nationwide injunctions against President Trump's policies. It'll make it harder for federal judges to issue a nationwide injunction against a future Democratic president. So the next Democratic president, there will be cases where judges can no longer issue a nationwide injunction against their new policy that they would have been able to before today. So keep that in mind as well. Wow. There's a lot going on with this. But anyways, we're gonna do it. We're gonna power through. We're gonna cover it. We will show you what President Trump had to say about this a little later. Okay, so let's get into it. I have some articles here for you that'll hopefully make things a little more clear. Talking about what the impact of this will be. But you can see this right here. Supreme Court limits nationwide injunctions, but fate of Trump birthright citizenship order unclear. Whew. All right, let me take a few comments here. First of all, I got to say a couple thank yous. Then I'm going to take a couple comments, and then we'll get into the article. Let's see. I owe a couple thank yous here, though. Thank you to Analog Alien 11. Thanks for your support. Also, man, and a lot of the names on YouTube today are different because YouTube, I think, has a little glitch where the names have been changed. So Beam Me Up, thank you. Oh, Beam Me Up says you can edit your new handle name on YouTube in your profile. So is my name still the same? Let's see. If I say test in the YouTube chat, what does my name come up as? Oh, it's still Agenda Free TV. But yeah, one of our viewers said if YouTube is displaying the incorrect name, you can edit it in your profile. I'm not sure about that, but anyways, you can look into that if you like. Thank you, Nikki Wadley. Thank you, Nikki, for being a member. Blue Jays. Nikki says anchor babies are not in the Constitution. To be clear, this ruling today is not on the constitutional merits of President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. The court system will ultimately issue a ruling on that, but that is not, or a final ruling. That was not the topic today. I didn't say Nikki was saying it was. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Blue Jay 61, our member, Marshmallow, Lover 130I, Carolyn P. 1721. Carolyn says YouTube is showing usernames instead of display names. Cal Folsom, our member. Justin King, thanks for your support. All right. I want to take a few comments. Hold on a second here. Hold on a moment here. Yeah, a lot of these names are really messed up. Okay. Our viewer, Melissa Terry, thinks it will hurt children not being able to get food stamps and health care. Now, it remains to be seen how much impact this is going to have. Will there be, at least temporarily, children who are born in the U.S. who before today would have been considered citizens, but now at least temporarily will not be considered citizens. Although it's possible that in the future they would be considered citizens if President Trump's executive order is declared unconstitutional ultimately. It's a confusing situation. Let's see here. Our viewer II thinks it's a great victory for the president. Robert Law thinks Trump is relying on executive orders because he is too weak to be able to make a deal as legislation. Renee McGee says, what a day. Then you also could have a situation, at least temporarily, where a child born to two parents who are here illegally is a citizen if they are born in one state, but not a citizen if they are born in another state, which seems like it might be a confusing, difficult thing. That is also ultimately, I believe the Supreme Court would feel a need to rule on the actual executive order and have a single policy for all 50 states. But will there be a temporary period of time where it's different in different states? Eliza Jane says, this has been very confusing to me. You're not the only one. Okay, let's check this out. Let's get into some of the articles. We'll talk about this. I'm going to show you what President Trump had to say about this. I want to talk about some of the details first, but then we'll show you President Trump did a whole press conference on this. Okay, so AP says, a united conservative majority of the Supreme Court ruled today that federal judges lack the authority to grant nationwide injunctions. In certain cases, by the way, not all nationwide injunctions, I believe, in certain cases. But that decision left unclear whether President Trump's restrictions on birthright citizenship could soon take effect in parts of the country. Now, I'm going to skip down here because this is an important paragraph to know what's going on. The justices agreed with the Trump administration, as well as President Biden's Democratic administration before it, that judges are overreaching by issuing orders that apply to everyone instead of just the parties before the court. Judges have issued more than 40 such nationwide injunctions since Trump took office for his second term in January. So the idea is the president issues an executive order. Somebody who feels like they're harmed by it, somebody, a person or institution or a group of people or institutions, they file a lawsuit and they say, well, this executive order is unconstitutional. It's harming me. So what in such a case, I believe what the ruling said today is if the district court judge finds that, yes, the executive order is unconstitutional, they can grant relief to the person or people or entities that filed the lawsuit. But they can't just say, well, now everybody in the country gets relief. This doesn't apply to anybody in the country. So we'll get into this some more. This outcome represented a victory for Trump, says AP, who has complained about judges throwing up obstacles to his agenda. Nationwide or universal injunctions had emerged as an important check on Trump's efforts to expand executive power and remake the government and a source of mounting frustration to him and his allies. But the court left open the possibility that Trump's birthright citizenship changes could remain blocked nationwide. So there could be a different type of executive order. There could be a different type of nationwide injunction issued, which the court ruling today does not apply to, which blocks his order nationwide. We'll have to see if that happens. Trump's executive order would deny citizenship to U.S.-born children of people who are in the country illegally or temporarily. That's what his executive order says. That Just because your child is born on U.S. soil doesn't mean the child is a citizen if the parents are here illegally or temporarily. The cases now return to lower courts, where judges will have to decide how to tailor their orders to comply with the Supreme Court ruling. But enforcement of the policy can't take place for another 30 days. So this executive order by President Trump cannot be enforced for at least 30 days. Even after 30 days, it's unclear whether the court's decision could produce a confusing patchwork of rules that might differ in the 22 states that sued over the Trump order, and the rest of the country, it could be different in different states for a while. Oh my gosh. As I said before, the Supreme Court justices' majority agreed with the Trump administration, as well as President Joe Biden's Democratic administration before it, that judges are overreaching by issuing orders that apply to everyone instead of just the parties who have sued, the parties before the court. Judges have issued more than 40 such orders since Trump took office for a second term in January. Let's see. Okay. Federal courts, said Amy Coney Barrett, who wrote the decision for the majority, federal courts do not exercise general oversight of the executive branch. They resolve cases and controversies consistent with the authority Congress has given them. When a court decides that the executive branch has acted unlawfully, the answer is not for the court to exceed its power to. Meaning, again, the majority said that in certain cases, federal judges, if they find that a presidential a policy the president has implemented unlawful, they can't just block that policy for everybody in the country, everywhere in the country, because the justices said the judges have not been given that power by the Constitution. Okay, we'll hear from President Trump later. He said the decision was amazing and a monumental victory for the Constitution. Senate Democratic leader Schumer said it's an unprecedented and terrifying step toward authoritarianism, a grave danger to our democracy, and a predictable move from this extremist MAGA court. Oh, and I'll show you a quote here from one of the dissenting judges, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, writing in dissent for the three liberal judges, called the decision nothing less than an open invitation for the government to bypass the Constitution. This is so, she said, because the administration may be able to enforce a policy even when it has been challenged and found to be unconstitutional by a lower court. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to take some more comments here. Then it gets confusing. It gets even more confusing about because the judges today didn't say federal judges. The Supreme Court today did not say there can never be a lawful nationwide injunction. They just said in certain situations, when a federal judge has previously issued a nationwide injunction, they can no longer issue that kind of nationwide injunction in that situation anymore. But there will be other nationwide injunctions that are still seen as legal, which makes this more confusing. So, for example, this paragraph is going to sound confusing. Rights groups that sued over the policy filed new court documents following the Supreme Court ruling, taking up a suggestion from Justice Brett Kavanaugh that judges still may be able to reach anyone potentially affected by the birthright citizenship order by declaring them part of a putative nationwide class. So I'm not going to start getting into these technicalities, but again, this would be a way. So what you can see here is there are people opposed to Trump's policy who are trying to use a different legal maneuver now to get a different kind of nationwide injunction that's not covered by the Supreme Court ruling today. If that's the simplest way I can explain it. Oh my gosh, it's so complex. Oh, a couple more quick things and I'll take comments from the AP article. Birthright citizenship automatically makes anyone born in the U.S. an American citizen, including children born to mothers in the country illegally. That right was enshrined soon after the Civil War in the Constitution's 14th Amendment. In a notable Supreme Court decision, where is it here? In 1898, United States versus Wong Kim Ark, the Supreme Court held that the only children who did not automatically receive U.S. citizenship upon being born on U.S. soil were the children of diplomats who have allegiance to another government. Also, enemies present in the U.S. during hostile occupation, those born on foreign ships, and those born to members of sovereign Native American tribes. So those were the only exceptions. The Trump administration has asserted that children of non-citizens are not, quote, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, a phrase used in the amendment, and therefore are not entitled to citizenship, but states, immigrants, and rights groups have sued to block the executive order, have accused the administration of trying to unsettle the broader understanding of birthright citizenship that has been accepted since the 14th Amendment's adoption. Okay. Wow. All right, I'm going to take some more comments here. I know this is complex. It's important, but it's complex. Let's see. Yes, the Trump administration had wanted the Supreme Court to allow Trump's plan to go into effect for everyone except the handful of people and groups that sued. Failing that, the administration argued the plan could remain blocked for now in the 22 states that sued. And again, let me take some comments on this, but it's possible that starting 30 days from now, there will be one policy in part of the country about birthright citizenship and another policy in another part of the country about birthright citizenship. In some parts of the country, it'll be the case that anybody born on U.S. soil to even illegal parents who are in the U.S. illegally is a U.S. citizen. And in other states, if somebody is born to two non-citizens on U.S. soil, they will not automatically be a citizen. It could differ by state for a while, which I know sounds confusing, but that could end up being the case, at least temporarily. Oh my gosh, it is so complex. I'm doing my best, but I know it's complex. I'm sorry if it's very confusing. Let me take some comments from you guys. We'll have some more about this. Flog Bishop says it was that way for gay marriage till it went to the Supreme Court. So I am not a legal expert, but yes, there have been. Well, I believe it's like, I certainly am confident in saying there are past policies where there have been different policies in different states and also different rulings about the policies in different states. But what this specifically was about today was whether the ruling today was about whether in certain cases a judge can issue an injunction saying this presidential policy cannot apply anywhere in the country. And a bunch of those type of rulings are no longer allowed anymore. But a difference here is that, let me also say this, a difference here is that, well, I don't want to say that specifically. I don't want to try to offer legal analysis that I am not qualified to give. Also, let me say this. Unlike some cases where you might have a different policy about something in different states, which for certain aspects of our lives, there are different policies in different states, whether someone is considered a citizen in certain states could present unique challenges. whether somebody's a citizen, it can change in different states, and also depends on the status of their parents. Because then, for example, a state would need to know would have to ascertain the immigration status of the parents to know if the person's a citizen, which is a whole other thing. We'll talk about that shortly. Okay. Ethan Griffiths thinks the Supreme Court should have ruled on the birthright citizenship as well, so there will be no confusion on what the order does do. They have made a mess out of this. Now, I believe that could eventually happen, but they haven't. I don't believe the Supreme Court has heard those arguments at this point, and I don't believe they've taken up a case that has gotten to them about that. I'm not sure about this, but they were not in. I don't believe they've heard arguments on this. So, but your point is interesting, saying something like, well, if they're going to issue this ruling and then not rule on the actual merits of the birthright citizenship case, it does leave this period of time before they rule on because ultimately you'd think that there will be a ruling that a ruling. I would think that eventually it'll make its way to the Supreme Court, and they will say this is the ruling for all the states, and it'll apply to every state. But given that hasn't happened yet, you are leaving this possible period of time where it could be different in different states. And you might think that this policy just should not be one that's allowed to be different in different states. Maybe you think that. Some people do. I don't know if there was it's a good question of whether there was a method for them to issue a quick ruling on the birthright citizenship issue. That I don't know. Let's see here. Cinder Flame thinks it would bring more people to Democratic states, even if they are illegal, might not work out for Republicans. So what you're saying, Cinder Flame, is that there may be people who are here. Maybe they're here temporarily, legally but temporarily, and they're going to have a baby, and they say, well, in my state I'm in now, that baby won't be legal, so I'm going to move to a state where it would be legal. And you're saying it could cause some people to move to different states if they're going to have children. That's an interesting possibility. I don't know how widespread that might be, or at least. Also, then I'm wondering, if they have the baby in one state, but then they move to another state, how does that work? Say you have a baby in a state which in that state that says that baby's. So let's say that there's two people here illegally, and they have a baby in a state which says the baby was born on U.S. soil. That's a citizen. So the baby's a citizen. But then if the baby goes to a different state, can ICE just arrest the baby in that state because they're in a different state and they're not a citizen? What settles the case as to whether the federal government can throw the person out because they're not a citizen? Does it depend on what state they were originally born in, or does it change if they move, or does that? I don't know. So. I'm just bringing up an issue, a possibility that I don't. It seems like possibly an issue to me, but I don't know. Let's see here. Let me show you something else about this. There was an FAQ about this ruling. What the Supreme Court's ruling means for birthright citizenship. Let's check this out. Oh, and when I say the state, I mean, so these are federal rulings, but the federal rulings might only apply in certain parts of the country. So I know I haven't even talked about this yet, but I believe, according to the Supreme Court ruling, injunctions may end up some of the parties that sued the federal government over President Trump's executive order were states. Some states sued the federal government. And I believe, I might be wrong about this, I believe that under the ruling today, it may be legal for federal judges to grant everybody in the, to issue an order that says President Trump's ruling does not apply in this particular state because the state sued the government. So you could get a situation where it applies in certain states and not other states, even though this is, you have federal judges moving on it, ruling on it, it's a matter of federal law. Anyways, one of these articles will talk about that. Oh, really quick, let me thank a couple people. Jean-Paul Lachance, thank you for the gift memberships. I really appreciate that. Beam me up. Yes, as I said earlier, we are going to play you the President Trump press conference that he held earlier today. I'm sorry I didn't cover this live, but sometimes with these Supreme Court decisions, they're quite complex. It's hard to get a grasp on what they say. And sometimes I prefer to give it a little time so I can research it some, and even experts can look into it. And then so I get a little better idea and have maybe some articles to show you about it when we come on the air. If I come on right after, I might just have nothing at all to say about it and not know anything at all about it. So I decided to wait a little while today on this one to have a little more perspective on what this is all about. Thank you, Tanner Toxicity, who says, could it be used to limit the Second Amendment? Well, so it's not what it's doing. Let me just say this. This ruling today is limiting the ability of a judge to issue an order saying that a presidential proposed policy cannot apply anywhere in the country. Because the federal judge previously might say, hey, this executive order is unconstitutional, so it can't apply anywhere in the country. In some cases like that, judges will not be able to issue those orders now. But the federal judge can still rule it's unconstitutional, and the case can still make its way through the courts. So it can ultimately get to the Supreme Court, and when the Supreme Court issues a ruling on the constitutionality of it, that's it. That's going to apply to everyone. So as I understand it, this ruling has not changed ultimately the power of the court system to review presidential policies, presidential executive orders, and policies implemented by the president, and decide on their constitutionality. But what it has done is limit a case where the type of cases where a single federal judge can say, no, that can't be used in the entire country. So I don't believe it, and it certainly doesn't give the court system power to overrule punch the Constitution. So again, it's about whether a federal judge can look at a presidential policy, say it's unconstitutional, and say, well, because of that, nobody right now in the country, this cannot be applied anywhere in the country. So that's specifically what it's saying. But even, it's not saying, it's saying in some cases a federal judge can no longer do that. But even in such a case, the case could eventually get to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will issue a ruling, which I'm guessing will happen for birthright citizenship, and it'll apply to the whole country no matter what it is. I hope that answers your question, Tanner Toxicity. Thank you to Crazy Yoda, who says, I think it should be on a case-by-case basis. Make your case, and if it persuades a judge in your favor, good on them. Now, so what Crazy Yoda is saying is that anybody who wants to challenge one of these executive orders and have it not apply to them because they think it's unconstitutional should sue. Now, an argument against that is that well, if an order is deemed unconstitutional by a judge, is the only way somebody should be able to get relief from that order to have to file a lawsuit? Like every citizen in the country who wants release from it has to file their own lawsuit. Now, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but there's this. That's part of this too. Is to how much should somebody? Should people all across the country have to file lawsuits against a presidential policy they think is unconstitutional if they want relief for it, or is it practical to expect people to be able to do that or to have to do that? But I'm not an expert on this issue. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm just saying there's that kind of viewpoint out there too. We'll talk about it. Hey, thanks also to J.K. Lloyd. I appreciate it. Thank you, J.K. Lloyd. And History is Mystery. Thank you. And also the Gaming Murph. The Gaming Murph believes that the Supreme Court will rule on birthright citizenship in early October. When are they? Are they scheduled to? Are they scheduled yet to rule on it? I'm going to ask the internet because I don't know. I just asked the internet, and the internet told me no, that they haven't. They might at some point, but they have not taken up a case yet that would ultimately end with them ruling on it. But I might be wrong. I found one response on the internet that said they hadn't. It's making its way through the court. There are various lawsuits against President Trump's executive order, which, as I understand it, they would eventually probably make their way to the Supreme Court. But I don't believe it has made their way yet. But I may be wrong about this. I'll try to find out more. Thank you to, hold on a second here. Dark Crypto for your support. Water999 for your support. Big Dog Gaming for your support. Thank you. All right, let's see. Let's get into some more of this. This is a tough story because it's so complex. But let's get into some more about it. Here, this is a FAQ. What the Supreme Court's ruling means from birthright citizenship. Again, President Trump issued an executive order at the start of this term, which, as I understand it, said basically, if a baby is born on U.S. soil, they no longer are automatically a citizen if neither of their parents is a citizen or is here permanently legally. So, for example, if two people here illegally in the U.S. had a baby, under President Trump's executive order, that baby would not be an American citizen. That has not been the understanding of the Constitution's 14th Amendment for over 100 years now. But President Trump, in his executive order, said, this is the policy now. So there's that question. And several judges had said President Trump's executive order is unconstitutional, and they said it cannot apply anywhere in the country. They issued a nationwide injunction against it. But the Supreme Court today has said those nationwide injunctions issued against President Trump's executive order were unconstitutional. The judges do not have the power in these particular cases to issue nationwide injunctions. Okay? So, this is a short article explaining some of this. The Washington Post. The Supreme Court handed President Trump a significant victory today in a ruling that narrowed the authority of federal judges and sparked a legal scramble for groups trying to stop his birthright citizenship ban from taking effect. The judges limited the ability of lower court judges. Those are federal court judges, but they're lower than the Supreme Court, district court judges. The Supreme Court limited the ability of lower court judges to issue nationwide injunctions and and they also paused Trump's executive order, which would end birthright citizenship for U.S.-born children of undocumented immigrants and foreign visitors for at least 30 days. So Trump's executive order will not come into effect in some parts of the country. In other parts of even if it comes into effect in some parts of the country, it won't do so for at least 30 days. The ruling could have vast implications for both Trump's ability to move forward with some of his administration's key policy proposals and for immigrant families living in states that are not protected by an injunction. But the justices also left open a path for challengers to continue to try to block one of the president's signature initiatives to restrict immigration. Much will depend on how the next month unfolds. So there still could be an injunction ordered, a nationwide injunction that bans the new Trump policy from being put into effect in the U.S. It just would have to go a different legal route than the existing nationwide injunctions did, which I know sounds really confusing. Okay, what did the court decide? The Post says the 6-3 decision, which split along ideological lines today, did not address the constitutionality of Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship. That is important. The judges today had nothing to say about whether President Trump's executive order about birthright citizenship was constitutional or not. They have not decided that yet. That question is still being weighed by lower courts. It has not even gotten to the Supreme Court yet. Instead, today's decision focused on the ability of individual district court judges to issue nationwide freezes to policies that have stymied the agendas of both Democratic and Republican administrations. So, again, there were judges who issued nationwide injunctions against certain policies that President Biden tried to implement too, as well as President Trump. 22 Democratic-led states and immigrant advocacy groups contended that it is the judiciary's role to block policies that are unconstitutional or could cause irreparable harm while their legality is being argued in court. So again, what these nationwide injunctions would do is say, while this case is being argued in court, you cannot start enforcing this new policy until it makes its way through the courts. That's what these nationwide injunctions would say. The Supreme Court ruled that such universal injunctions probably exceed the authority Congress granted to federal courts. In writing for the majority, Justice Amy Coney Barrett said judges should only grant relief to the parties who brought the particular lawsuit before their court and should not extend their rulings to protect others. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in a dissent, panned the majority's decision, calling it nothing less than an open invitation for the government to bypass the Constitution, and said the patchwork legal approach required by the court standard held the potential to cause chaos for the families of all affected children. What does it mean? Though the outcome of the case was a victory for the Trump administration, the court's conservative majority left open the possibility that his birthright citizenship policy could remain blocked nationwide. The judges today paused the implementation of the ban for at least 30 days, giving time for the lower courts to bring previous rulings in line with the new standards set by today's ruling. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, in a concurring opinion, suggested that lower court judges could still determine that a wide-ranging hold on the policy is necessary if plaintiffs pursued their challenges as class action cases. I know this is confusing, but as I understand it, basically the idea is if a case is brought against President Trump's executive order, but it's brought as a class action case, which is where it's being brought in the name of a large group of people. If that's the case, then the judge could, in such a case, rule constitutionally that there should be a nationwide injunction preventing the policy from being implemented everywhere. I know it's really confusing. The states that challenge Trump's order could also argue that the only way to fully protect their interests is to impose a nationwide ban. If the lower courts determine their previously issued nationwide injunctions can no longer stand, their orders would only remain in place for the District of Columbia and the 22 states that sued the administration. Presumably, Trump's birthright citizenship ban could then be allowed to take effect in the 28 remaining states if there are no new court challenges. So there's going to be a lot more court stuff on this anyway. Okay, a little background here. What did Trump's executive order say? He signed an executive order in January to end automatic citizenship for U.S.-born children of undocumented immigrants and foreign visitors. Trump's order was blocked by a federal judge before it could take effect, but had it been allowed to move forward as written, it would have denied U.S. citizenship to the children of unauthorized immigrants and foreigners on temporary work, student, and tourist visas. Some studies estimate that that population would be more than 150,000 babies a year. And again, this executive order of Trump does not just apply to people here illegally. It would apply to children of foreigners here on temporary work visas, temporary student visas, and temporary tourist visas. Trump's executive order was based on a reinterpretation of the 14th Amendment, which was ratified in 1868 and grants citizenship to those born on U.S. soil who are subject to the jurisdiction of the federal government. Okay, 22 states sued over this. What will happen next? Immigration aid organizations have already rushed to court to ask federal judges to block Trump's birthright citizenship ban through a class action lawsuit seeking to protect all children born to families without permanent legal status. So, supposedly, the ruling today, in theory, leaves it open for a federal judge to issue a nationwide executive order on President Trump's policy if the lawsuit is a class action lawsuit. So basically, you now have class action lawsuits being filed, from what I understand. Gabriel Chin, who's a professor at the UC Davis School of Law, said, though class action lawsuits can typically be difficult to win, lawyers seeking relief for undocumented and temporary residents may have a strong case. That's what he says. Additional lawsuits are expected in the coming days and weeks. Some experts said the Supreme Court could be asked again to weigh in on the constitutionality of birthright citizenship once the lower courts resolve the issues the justices sent them back to consider, but there is much still unknown. So, will the Supreme Court end up ruling on birthright citizenship again, which they last did, I think, over 100 years ago? But maybe I'm wrong about that. We don't know. Amanda Frost, who is a professor of law at the University of Virginia, said today's Supreme Court ruling is momentous, and said the next 30 days will be critical. If no nationwide relief is granted, then whether a child is granted birthright citizenship could come down to what state they are born in. As of 30 days from today, if you give birth in a state that has not sued the Trump administration over this, the government may treat your child as undocumented and not a citizen. She advised affected members to consider moving to states that sued. So, I mean, it's really wild. But I'm trying my best to simplify things. Hopefully you get a general idea of what this is about. But it's pretty crazy. A lot is unsettled about this right now. We're going to show you what President Trump said shortly. I want to take some more comments on this. Let's see here. So Star Troopian says, so where would the kids go? Are we going to round up kids at school and put them in camps? So Star Troopian raises an interesting issue. It's not just... I have a question now. What if there's a 5-year-old? If there's a 5-year-old who was born to parent who was born on U.S. soil 5 years ago to parents who were not here legally. Does this ruling, in theory, if they were born in a certain state, could it be the case that they retroactively lose their citizenship? Or is Trump's executive order not retroactive? I don't know how that works. But a whole other question, that's one issue. But another issue is, let's just think of the babies. Let's say there's a baby born in a state under which the injunction no longer applies. So what will happen to those babies? Could ICE just deport the babies because the babies are now here illegally? How does that work? I don't know. You could imagine a case where, I'm just saying, you might say, well, the babies get deported with the parents, but maybe the parents aren't even around. I don't know. But let me just see. I want to check, was Trump's birthright citizenship executive order not retroactive? All right, it was not retroactive. President Trump's order on birthright citizenship applied to people born after a specific date in 2025. So just to be clear, like a 5-year-old who was already considered a citizen would not be affected by it. That is an interesting. I can show you the executive order. Bet it says it right in there. This is the original executive order from January 20th. And I believe it said in there, I thought it said so in there. It shall apply only to persons born within the U.S. after 30 days from the date of this order. So the executive order applies to everyone born, I think it's February 19th of this year or later. So it's not this. So again, if you were a 5-year-old in the country now who got your citizenship because you were born on U.S. soil to parents who were not legal, you would not be at risk of losing your citizenship under this executive order. That's an interesting question, though. As to the whole deporting babies issue, that's a whole other thing. All right, let me take some more comments here. Let's see. Princess Kidda said, what is the point of having elections if some judge can just make up rules? So to be clear, the Supreme Court ruling today does not limit the ability of a federal judge to declare a presidential policy unconstitutional. It limits the ability of a federal judge to say that the presidential policy is temporarily frozen from applying anywhere in the country while it makes its way through the courts. So the judges can still rule on the policy, but in certain cases, they will not be able to say, nope, that policy doesn't apply anywhere, and we'll let it work its way through the courts. But while it's working its way through the courts, it cannot apply anywhere. And look, as I said before, President Biden, as well as President Trump, had a number of policies where a federal judge would come out and say, nope, policy is unconstitutional, doesn't apply anywhere in the country. And, one complaint about these injunctions is that, well, all it takes is one judge in a favorable area, or, there might be a lot of judges out there, but maybe there's one court that's favorable to one political position, and then there's one district in which the judges are more favorable to one political leaning, and one district where they're more favorable to another political leaning. So all you need is to go to the friendly district and get that judge there to rule, and it applies for everyone. So, but it doesn't. This ruling does not affect. It doesn't take away a judge's abilities to declare a presidential policy unconstitutional, but it does take away in certain cases their ability to freeze that policy nationwide. There's a whole other question. I wonder if I can find something about the pros and cons of injunctions. That's a really interesting question. The pros and cons of nationwide injunctions. Hang on a moment here. Oh, by the way, this you can see here, AP says high court ruling on injunctions could imperil many court orders which are currently blocking the Trump administration. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision today limiting federal judges from issuing nationwide injunctions threatens to upend numerous lawsuits that have led to orders blocking Trump administration policies. Between the start of the new administration in mid-May, judges issued roughly 40 nationwide injunctions against the White House on topics including federal funding, election rules, and diversity and equity considerations. When those nationwide injunctions are issued, what the federal judge is saying is, I believe this policy is unconstitutional, and therefore it should not be enforced. That's what the ruling is. Okay, so birthright citizenship. Multiple federal judges have issued nationwide injunctions blocking President Trump's order denying citizenship to U.S.-born children of people who are in the country illegally or temporarily. Justice is left unclear whether the restrictions on birthright citizenship could soon take effect in parts of the country. There's also Trump policies on election rules, on legal aid for migrants, on DEI, on transgender care. Those can be, the injunctions on those can be impacted too. For example, a federal judge in February stopped the Trump administration from withholding federal funds from health care facilities that provide gender-affirming care to patients under the age of 19. So I assume that it sounds like that nationwide injunction could be impacted as well. Possibly. Just a little, these nationwide injunctions where a single judge says, hey, this policy this president is implementing is unconstitutional, and I am issuing a ruling that's going to freeze it from being applied nationwide. And I believe these nationwide injunctions, they happen while the case is still moving its way through the court system, as I understand it. I want to just mention a couple pros and cons that have been argued about having such nationwide injunctions. But before I do that, yeah, they are. So the idea is that the nationwide injunction gets issued while the case is still moving through the court system. It's my understanding. So, as an example, I asked Google AI. I said pros and cons of nationwide injunctions, and just to give you some of them that people might argue. They are a check on executive power. Someone might argue that these nationwide these nationwide injunctions are good because if a president tries to exceed their constitutional power, then this can check that. It can stop the policy from going into effect. And also fairness and uniformity. Having a judge be able to issue a ruling like this that applies to everyone makes sure that everybody in the country is treated the same way, even if they can't themselves file a lawsuit. Maybe they don't have the financial means to file a lawsuit and hire a good lawyer and that kind of thing. And also efficiency and resource savings. By having a judge be able to issue a nationwide injunction, it prevents having all these lawsuits be filed nationwide by all these people who might be impacted by a policy. You can imagine the resources that would take up. However, so those are some, I guess you could say, traditionally cited pros for allowing these nationwide injunctions. As for cons, arguments against them, judicial overreach. Some argue that a district court judge who shouldn't be able to settle national policy like this. And maybe they don't have the expertise of, like, say, a appellate court or a Supreme Court judge. Forum shopping. I was talking about this before, where maybe somebody who wants to prevent a president's policy from being put into effect, all they need to do is find one judge who will agree with them and who can ban it for the whole country. And maybe there's certain parts of the country where the judges are more favorable to this kind of ruling. So they just pick the part of the country, the district, where the judges are going to be more favorable. And that's seen as undesirable, having that kind of thing going on. That would be an argument against these nationwide injunctions. Also, you could have conflicting injunctions where different courts issue different injunctions, and you have confusion because of that. Anyways, these are just, I'm not an expert on injunctions, but I'm trying to give you a sense of just some of the arguments. Some people have had a real problem with these injunctions and say that they shouldn't be allowed, and some say no, they're good. It's good that judges can do this kind of thing. So just giving you a sense for some of the arguments on both sides. It's certainly not comprehensive. All right. I'm going to show you, by the way, I'm going to take a few more comments. I have a little video. I'm going to show you, I told you I'd show you the press conference on this. I'm going to show it to you. It's so crazy. It's such a complex issue, and then the rulings, it's so complex and everything. But we still should be able to talk about it a bit. Let me see. Hold on a second here. Let me check something. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any kind of big breaking news while we're talking about this. Really quick. Periodically, we do these legal streams. They end up being a bit more technical than the usual streams. P. Dowg says we can handle it. Our viewer Pi Squared says one district doesn't get to decide for the whole country. Now, again, the ruling today did not ban all nationwide injunctions, but it said that in certain cases, they're only going to be possible in certain cases. Star Troopian says, do people who are illegal and have children in the U.S. just drop them off at fire stations now? How do we know? It is an interesting question that if a child was dropped off somewhere or a child was found somewhere and it could not be discovered who the parents were, well, that could happen anyway. That situation could happen anyway. A baby could be, but I put it this way. Let me say this. If a baby were dropped off at a fire station in the U.S. and it was a very young baby, maybe it could be safely assumed that the baby was in the country when they were born, but it's not necessary, right? Not necessarily the case, but you could, I mean, probably, maybe it's just assumed that if a newborn baby is found somewhere and the parents are never found, I don't know if such a case has ever happened, that would it just be assumed the baby was born in the country? But now would it be like we need to find the parents to know if this is a citizen or not? I don't know how that works. There might be all kinds of particular cases that present legal dilemmas here as a result of this issue. I'm not sure. Jesse McAllister thinks it was not good that judges could do this kind of thing with these injunctions. Let's see here. Turnt Off says, R.I.P. the Constitution. You know, I think somebody who's against this ruling might say something like, look, the president now can just do whatever they want. They can just issue any executive order they want. And fine, some judge will find it unconstitutional, but the judge won't be able to prevent the policy from going into effect for most of the country. So, and it'll take forever for the Supreme Court to rule on it. So a president can just declare whatever policy they want, and for several years it'll be enforced in a bunch of the country, even if it's ultimately found unconstitutional. Now, I'm not saying that's what you should think. I'm just that could be a view of someone who is against this ruling. I'm just throwing that out there as something they might say. Paul says, shouldn't we read the opinions? That is a great question. I addressed it before. I am not going to attempt to read the opinions on this broadcast because they are very complex and I don't understand them. I will post it again. I posted it earlier. I'll post it in the chat, but they get quite complex and technical quite quickly. And I don't feel that I'm in a position to understand a lot of what they say, and I think it'll just be confusing for our viewers. So I apologize. I've read you a couple quotes, short quotes from the opinions, but I do not have the background to understand these opinions. I just don't have it. So I will post it in the chat. I'm going to post, you get the document with them in it. I wish I did. I am sure that there are different channels on social media where, say, lawyers and constitutional law experts do videos about this where they get into the nuts and bolts, and I would certainly encourage you to watch those videos if you so wish and get into the details. But I am not going to try, if I try to go through these things and give you readings of them, I'm most likely just going to say things that are completely wrong. And I don't want to do that. So we're not doing that here. But I posted the link again. But I don't want to exceed my my level of background. Okay, let's. You know, it's unfortunate because it makes it tough. It makes it tough to not only cover but to follow coverage of. And I mean, I'm a news consumer. I'm not somebody who just covers the news. I want to read about the news. I want to be informed. And it's just very difficult with these Supreme Court cases because they are legal rulings based on legal arguments. And at a certain point, I can't, with the background I have, just read through the document and understand it. Now, maybe there's a world in which if I did a lot of research and got more background, I could get the basic idea of it. But, I mean, again, there's a lot that goes into these rulings. There's a lot of subtleties, and it's difficult. So it's just the way it is. You know, and I don't like to oversimplify things that are not that simple. And I think that happens a lot with the court cases. Well, I will show you, though, I do have a little video here about this. You can see Reuters says Supreme Court in birthright case limits judges' power to block presidential policies. There's a video that goes with this that I want to show you. And I'm going to, in a short time, I'm going to show you President Trump's press conference on this. But this video here I want to play for you. Hang on a second here.
I want to just thank...
We're going to actually watch the press conference in a second. The video has a little from the press conference, but it talks about the ruling too. I think it does. Here it is. All right, here's the Reuters video from that article that talks about this.
I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday applauded the Supreme Court after it delivered what he called a monumental victory.
I'm hearing two things. Why am I hearing two? Why am I hearing two audios? Were you guys hearing one audio or two? I was hearing two audios. Did you guys hear two or not? If not, I'll just play it. I don't know why I'm hearing it. It's very strange. One, people were saying one. Okay, I'm going to play it. There's one. It's the oddest thing. There. Man, that was weird. Oh, hold on a second. Hold on a moment. Wonder if this got messed up. Oopsie. I figured it out. That should be it. I think we're going to be good now. Let's try this again. Got to turn the audio up on the actual thing. Let's try this a third time.
I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday applauded the Supreme Court after it delivered what he called a monumental victory, limiting the power of federal judges to impose nationwide rulings to block his policies. That included his directive to limit birthright citizenship, which was halted by 3 injunctions issued by judges in Maryland, Massachusetts, and Washington state, while litigation challenging the policy plays out. But the Supreme Court did not let Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship go into effect immediately, saying the lower courts that blocked it must reconsider the scope of their orders.
Hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves.
The court's 6-3 ruling, authored by conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett, specified that Trump's executive order cannot take effect until 30 days after Friday's ruling, and it did not address the policy's legality. Still, Friday's ruling helps clear the way for Trump's order to eventually take effect in some parts of the country. Charles Cook is a law professor at Emory University and the University of Georgia.
This gives the president an enormous amount of power to basically rewrite federal law. That's what this executive order does. It tries to rewrite federal law, and the ability of citizens to stop that from happening. Some would say it speaks of dictatorship authority. We'll see what happens over the course of the next several weeks. Really, we'll learn very quickly how the Trump administration is going to interpret this.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in a dissent joined by the court's other 2 liberal members, said Trump's executive order is obviously unconstitutional. On his first day back in office, Trump signed an executive order directing federal agencies to refuse to recognize the citizenship of children born in the United States who do not have at least one parent who is an American citizen or a green card holder. That triggered outrage among immigration advocates, and challengers of the policy say more than 150,000 newborns would be denied citizenship annually under Trump's directive.
Unfortunately for Donald Trump, federal law says that they're U.S. citizens, so Trump's executive order is contrary to an actual written federal law, let alone constitutional interpretation.
The Supreme Court delivered a barrage of other rulings on Friday. In a 6-3 ruling, again divided along ideological lines, the court delivered victory to Christian and Muslim parents in Maryland who sued to keep their elementary school children out of certain classes when storybooks with LGBT characters are read. In another ruling, the court kept a key element of the Obamacare law that helps guarantee health insurers cover preventative care, such as cancer screenings, at no cost to patients. The High Court also upheld a Texas law that requires pornographic websites to have all users submit personally identifying information to verify that they are at least 18 years old.
I want to just thank again the Supreme.
All right, that was a little summary there. I'm going to show you guys, again, very soon. I will play the President Trump press conference on that came after this ruling. I want to take a couple more comments here. I got to thank a couple more people too. I want to thank our moderators too. Let me thank our moderators again. Ruth is moderating over there on YouTube. Janet B. Roberts May Queen, thank you for modding over on YouTube. Linda Belk, Larry, Misha moderate for us on X. Over there on Twitch. Bastion Girl, Big Ball of Yarn, Bot King Sentient, David Green, LB Prairie Dawn, Idaho Star, Matthew Kohai 3 McBritches, and also on Facebook. We have Kay Lowry Body moderating, and let's see here. I hope I'm not missing anyone. Margaret Riley, thanks for moderating. Thanks Erin Van Ness for subscribing on Facebook, and Christy Claft, and Sharon Klassen Goslin, Susan Priest Buchner, RJ Mercado, LT, thanks for subscribing over there. And before I get to a couple comments here, I also want to thank, one moment, Rodril Lekhan, thank you. Maddie and Kenza, Subliminal Penny, thank you. Miss Curvy, thank you. Florian Meyer, thank you. Florian thinks that President Trump's name will be remembered for a long time after he is president. Thank you, Florian Meyer. He says he is struggling in gaining a final and personal opinion about this president. Thank you also to Boomer Wow. Thank you, Boomer Wow. And Boomer Wow thinks people who are here illegally with American-born children will be deported together. Well, legally, the citizens, if people were here illegally and are still here illegally, but they have a child who was born on U.S. soil already, and last year or 5 years ago, whatever, and by virtue of that as a U.S. citizen, then legally those children could not be deported because they're U.S. citizens. So they have protection from that. But their being legal would not give the parents protection, I don't believe. Thank you to Rose Scott for the membership. Cartoon Maps, Chris Quebec City, who says, why would a judge who has jurisdiction only in their state, well, they're in their district, be able to issue a ruling on a subject that is 100% federally governed? So, this is, that kind of, it's a good question, but it gets to this, as I was saying before, there's pros and cons in the ability of a district court judge to issue an injunction that stops a presidential policy nationwide rather than just for their locality. I would like to talk. I think that's a really interesting question. The whole debate on nationwide injunctions themselves, regardless of the birthright citizenship debate. I had one document. There was a Congressional Research Service report on nationwide injunctions, and I had it here. Where is it here? But I don't think there was like a simple list of pros and cons in it. But I can show you, you can see here, this is from the Congressional Research Service from 2021. But you can see it was called Nationwide Injunctions, Law, History, and Proposals for Reform. Now this was about 4 years ago. And it's among the other things it said, in recent years, nationwide injunctions have generated significant debate among scholars, advocates, judges, and legislators. Nationwide injunctions are defined not by their geographic scope, but blah, 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 blah. It's blah, 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 blah. Defenders of nationwide injunctions argue that such orders prevent widespread harm, reduce the burdens of litigation by eliminating the need for every person affected by a challenged policy to bring a lawsuit, and promote consistency and the rule of law by uniformly halting allegedly illegal government actions. Opponents of nationwide injunctions counter that nationwide injunctions undermine established litigation procedures by allowing challengers to circumvent the requirements for bringing a class action or by triggering fast-track appeals in which the federal courts must evaluate a challenge policy based on limited factual and legal record. Even that sounds complex, I know. Some contend that nationwide injunctions raise constitutional issues because they award relief to people who are not parties to the litigation and who may lack standing to seek relief in federal court. Others argue that nationwide injunctions may prevent the government from effectively implementing its policies and create legal uncertainty as far-reaching government programs may proceed or halt at each level of the federal courts. Commentators also debate whether nationwide injunctions contribute to the politicization. I always get that word wrong. I always say it wrong. Politicization of the courts and erode judicial legitimacy. So I know that's a bit technical, but as you can see, there are a bunch of pros and cons cited about the ability of these single district court judges to put a hold on a presidential policy for the entire country. And this is from 4 years ago. So, and this was also something, the Biden administration had a number of policies halted by these nationwide injunctions. So this has been debated for years. Oops. Anyway, I'll post a link to this report in the chat if you want to read it. I haven't even read it yet. But it would be an interesting read to look at some of the pros and cons about nationwide injunctions. But certain ones will no longer be allowed after today. Thank you, Chris Quebec City, by the way, for your support, and Rose Scott. All right. Oh, and Callie Voltaire. Wow, that's really generous of you, Callie Voltaire. It's really kind of her. She knows a lot about law stuff. Very generous of our viewer and supporter, Callie Voltaire. Thank you. All right, let me take a few more comments and questions from you guys. And again, I apologize for, I guess, the superficiality of this report. It's just, I don't have I'm not a legal expert, and these are very difficult, complex legal issues. Let me just show you guys what the opinion looks like. I posted it in the chat a couple times. Let me just show you what it looks like. Here is the opinion. Now, there's the first part, which is just, this is just the syllabus, I believe, the overall summary, which is 6 pages. That's just the first part. Then there's the ruling here, Justice Barrett, and it goes into all this stuff. And I mean, just as an example from the ruling, the question whether Congress has granted federal courts the authority to universally enjoin the enforcement of an executive or legislative policy plainly warrants our review, as members of this court have repeatedly emphasized. See e.g. McHenry versus Texas Cop Shop, and all this stuff referring to earlier cases. So we could go through all this, but I'm not going to have the legal background The government is likely to succeed on the merits of its argument regarding the scope of relief. C. N. Ken v. Holder, holding that a stay application to be granted, the applicant must make a strong showing that it is likely to succeed on the merits. A universal injunction can be justified only as an exercise of equitable authority, yet Congress has granted federal courts no such power. Again, this is not an easy read. So I will post this again in the chat, but I do apologize. I wish there were a world in which it was an easier read and I could go through with you and we could understand everything, but that is just not possible right this second. So I'm posting the link again. You can read through the opinion, and I believe there's dissenting opinion in there too. The document itself is 119 pages long. But you have it now. Oh, you could ask chat, you could ask, I'm sure you can find summaries online. I've been showing you some summaries in some of the articles we've been reading. The Justice Sotomayor dissent is on page, if you're looking for it, the Justice Sotomayor dissent is on page, I'm going through, it's a number of pages. It is, it's on page 54 of the document. There's a dissent. Oops, it says Justice Sotomayor with Justice Kagan and Justice Jackson joining dissenting. She said the president is attempting to repudiate birthright citizenship. Every court that evaluated it has considered that order unconstitutional. And she says the government's not even asking this court to rule on the birthright citizenship executive order. The government instead tries its hand at a different game. It asks this court to hold that no matter how illegal the law or policy, courts can never simply tell the executive to stop enforcing it against everyone. She says this request is gamesmanship. She says the Supreme Court is playing along. She again, I think it's roughly on page 55 or 56 of the document I posted that her dissent is. She says no right is safe in the new legal regime the court creates. Today the threat is to birthright citizenship. Tomorrow a different administration may try to seize firearms from law-abiding citizens or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship. She says, majority holds that absent cumbersome class action litigation, courts cannot completely forbid even such plainly unlawful policies unless doing so is necessary to afford the formal parties complete relief. That holding renders constitutional guarantees meaningful in name only for any individuals who are not parties to a lawsuit. She calls it a grave attack on our system of law. I believe that somewhere in here, Amy Coney Barrett argues against the dissent, but I don't know exactly where that is. For what it's worth, just to give you a little sample of it, I'm looking at the sort of summary. Held that universal injunctions likely exceed the equitable authority that Congress has given to the federal courts. So they're saying that federal judges do not have the power to issue some of these universal injunctions that they have been issuing. But I will not attempt to go through all of this document and explain all of this ruling to you because I can't. So I will once again post it in the chat and you can read it. All right. Should we look at President Trump's press conference for right now? There's so much more to be said. Should we look at President Trump's press conference on this? The Big Daddy case is, why don't they speak like normal people? Well, so the thing is that they're not. Just the law is complex. Put it that way. The law is complex, and there's this. All right, so we're gonna. People are saying yes. We're gonna play in just a minute President Trump's press conference, but the law is complex. So, for example, when they rule on something like this, the Supreme Court, they have to go back and look at what are other rulings in the past about this kind of thing? What is legal precedent about this kind of thing? And there's all these legal theories that. So look, I mean, what happens with laws is laws get made. The Constitution gets made, but the Constitution doesn't explicitly say how the law is supposed to be applied in every situation. So it might, the Constitution might say something like, no law should be made, restricting the freedom of the press. But what does it mean? What kind of laws restrict the freedom of the press? Who is the press? What does a particular law restrict the freedom of the press? And so then you need to. So then there's different interpretations of what that one Constitution document means, because it's not clear a lot of time what it means when you apply it to particular cases. So over the centuries, the court system has worked on interpreting the Constitution, but that gets complex, and there's different theories about how the Constitution should be interpreted, and this body of constitutional law builds up, and there's different theories about how you should interpret it. And so these justices, when they are asked to rule on a case like this, they're not just saying, well, it seems to me, I think this. They have to go back and defend their rulings based on previous precedents, on constitutional legal theories, and those are complex things. So there's no real, if you really want to understand their whole reasoning, they can't just explain that to you simply if you don't have that background. The same way, I'm sure, like if you walked into a chemistry lab and you said to somebody, you said to one of the workers at the chemistry lab, explain to me what you're doing it here, but I have no chemistry background, so just fully explain it to me, but without specialized terms in a way I can understand. They're probably going to say, well, you're not going to understand it because you don't, there's no way I can just, it's not like 2 + 2 = 4. It's not that easy. So it's a specialized field with specialized language and all of this background that people who go into it know. The same way a doctor has to go to medical school, and when they approach, how to cure a disease or what kind of treatment to give, they're going to bring all this background into it that regular people don't have. It's like that. So it's just they're not trying to make it complex. It's just a complex topic in a complex field. So I wish it was not that way, but it is that way. So that's you get these, but they're trying to justify. If you're a constitutional lawyer, you can read through this and say, oh, this makes more sense to me. Okay. So, anyways, all right. Let's watch the press conference. Let's watch. It's always hard covering these Supreme Court rulings. So I try to just give you a basic idea of what it's about. And if you want to, you can go off and do more research yourself. I would love to have the time to do all sorts of research myself on. I wish I had the time to go to law school and just do that for a few years so I can understand these issues better, but I don't. Okay, we're going to watch what President Trump said today about this in his press conference about this ruling. Okay, are you guys ready? Thanks for bearing. Those of you who have bared with me today, bared? I don't even know if that's the right word. I appreciate you sticking with it. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'm going to put it on right now for you. I'm putting it on the screen right now. Get ready. Here we go. Why are you not seeing this? All right, so this was earlier today, and you're going to see what President Trump has to say about this. It went on for a little while. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing. I'll see what you guys think, because I think he starts talking about other things. But I'll see what you guys think. I can ask you about it. By the way, a couple thank yous here too. Anak123 for being a member. Just Mike. I haven't seen that, Mike, but I haven't seen reports of that. But periodically, Israel does launch strikes in Lebanon. So I haven't seen a report of that today. But if that's happening, I mean, that is something that has happened. I haven't seen reports of it today, but it does happen once in a while. They will strike targets there. But I haven't seen reports of it yet today. I'll keep an eye out. Thank you, Subliminal Penny from Maddie and Kenza. Oh, I think I thanked them already. Okay. And thanks for the memberships, John Paul LaChance. John Paul LaChance gave 50 people memberships in our YouTube chat. That's super nice of you, John Paul LaChance. Make sure you thank John Paul or anybody else if they give you a membership or a gift subscription. That was really nice of you. Thanks of 9 for the gift sub as well. Thanks to J Drabble. J Drabble, thank you. And Big Dog Gaming and Paper City Gamer. And Daredevil 2300. Thank you. All right, here we go. We're going to play you guys what President Trump had to say about this ruling. Okay? And let me just make sure I don't have... Sorry. There's like more comments on this and stuff and other stuff. Let's see here. Greedy Cat sent me something I need to look at. All right. We'll read more comments later. Here's this. Let's watch this. Here it is. The earlier President Trump press briefing after this ruling came out by the Supreme Court.
Well, this was a big one, wasn't it? This was a big decision. An amazing decision, one that we're very happy about. This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades, and we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century, me. I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple. I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts, and Justices Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people. Thanks for this decision, and thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants, because this is a very important decision. This is a decision that covers a tremendous amount of territory. But I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant. It's a giant. And they should be very proud, and our country should be very proud of the Supreme Court today. And with that, I'd like you to listen to the words of Pam Bondi. She's an incredible Attorney General. We're very proud of her. And as you know, Todd Blanche is with us, and we have so many others that worked on this case and other cases. And I think they're doing a great job. Pam, please say a few words.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for fighting for all Americans. Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer. Today, in the 6-3 opinion, Justice Barrett correctly holds that the district court lacks authority to enter nationwide or universal injunctions. These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. Active liberal judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policies. To put this in perspective, there are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that. 94 districts, and 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have blocked our policies, from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other issues. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. No longer. No longer. And on immigration, on a side note, today marks 2,711 arrests on these terrorists and these gangs. Total arrest today with HSI investigations. And thank you, Stephen Miller. Thank you to Homeland Security. Thank you to everyone working hand in hand with the FBI on all of these transnational gangs. TDA has been a huge terror to our country, as well as MS-13, as well as Sinaloa cartels. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have allowed district court judges to be emperors. They vetoed all of President Trump's power, and they cannot do that. This has been a bipartisan problem that has lasted 5 presidential terms, 5 different presidents, and it has ended today. We will continue to fight for President Trump's policies. I want to thank the Office of White House Counsel, Dave Warrington. You and your staff have been incredible. Our Solicitor General's office, John Sowers, Sarah Harris, and Todd Blanche and Emil Bovey. Todd's going to say a few words because we've had another major ruling today on transgender books and some other great wins that we've had. But no longer will they have this power in our country. It is the president's authority under his executive branch to do everything to fight for the American people, and he will continue to do that. That's why he was overwhelmingly elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, today's a great day for the rule of law. It's a great day for the Justice Department, and it's one that's been a long time coming, and one that every American should have been waiting for with bated breath. And so I echo what the President said and Attorney General Bondi, that the Supreme Court did a great thing today, not only for this administration, but for every American in this country. If not for the injunctions case, we would be here talking about another great decision that came down today, the trans books case, which restores parents' rights to decide their child's education. Seems like a basic idea, but it took the Supreme Court to set the record straight, and we thank them for that. And now that ruling allows parents to opt out of dangerous trans ideology and make the decisions for their children that they believe is correct. And so we thank the Supreme Court for that. There's been multiple decisions over the past several weeks that just show why this nationwide injunction ban had to happen. For example, what I mean by that is local district court judges issuing decisions that are clearly contrary to law just because they don't like the policy of President Trump. And when it gets to the Supreme Court has to correct it. But that takes time. The Attorney General thanked our lawyers, and I'll do it again. Our lawyers are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to fight these injunctions and to emergency appeals, emergency stays, going back to the district court judge, asking them to change their view. And so their hard work is really paying off today, but over the past few weeks. We had a stay of an order that prevented DHS from moving aliens to a third country. We had a stay of an order that stopped the Department of Defense from implementing military readiness, the EO that President Trump signed. We had another stay of an order forcing reinstatement of fired executive branch employees entirely within the President in Article 2, his right to do. We had a stay of, as you all know, of numerous DOJ cases. And again, every one of those stays requires a tremendous amount of work and effort by the lawyers and the parties involved, and they should be doing other work. They should be doing the work that the President and this administration demands and has a right to demand, and not fighting these local judges who don't make decisions based on the law. They make decisions because they just simply don't agree with the administration's decision about a policy, and that's wrong. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, for Pam, please.
Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Attorney General. So, as you know, the Supreme Court did not rule on the underlying constitutionality of the President's birthright citizenship order. So, what is the plan now? Are you going to try to implement the EO just in states where there isn't a legal challenge?
Yes, so birthright citizenship will be decided in October in the next session by the Supreme Court, unless it comes down in the next few minutes. I guess it could come down. I think they're still deliberating right now on some cases. As you heard, we just got transgender books, which is a huge win. But most likely, that will be decided in October in the next session. However, it indirectly impacts us because, as you correctly pointed out, if there's a birthright citizenship case in Oregon, it will only affect the plaintiff in Oregon, not the entire country. So yes, it's indirectly, but that's pending litigation, and we're waiting on that in the next term.
And how concerned are you that the Supreme Court will come back and determine that the executive order is unconstitutional?
Oh, we're very confident in the Supreme Court. But again, it's pending litigation, and that will directly be determined in October, but it indirectly impacts every case in this country, and we're thrilled with their decision today. Peter.
Madam Attorney General, thank you for being here to take our questions. A couple questions to the both of you. The EO had a 30-day grace period before it goes into effect. Is there any thought about trying to make it effective immediately within that period of time?
We're going to follow the law. We're going to make those decisions, and we're going to do what's right in the bounds of the law.
And then the DOJ didn't ask the justices to rule on the merits of the birthright citizenship ban. Just for explanation purposes, why?
Sure, because that's going to come down in October in the separate. This was huge because it's indirectly impacted today. As I said, it's case by case. Let me reiterate, of the 35 of the 40 nationwide injunctions filed against this president, against his executive authority as President of the United States, 35 of them came from Maryland, D.C., Massachusetts, California, Washington. I mean, that's crazy. These 5 districts. So yes, it indirectly impacts us. It will be a separate decision in October. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question for you, sir. Do you believe this ends the power of the lower court judges to stop your agenda? Do you see this as a full green light for your agenda going forward?
Well, you'd have to really speak to the lawyers about that. But this is really also a decision based on common sense. It didn't work the other way. It was a disaster where somebody from a certain location in a very liberal state or a liberal judge or a liberal group of judges could tie up a whole country for years because their decision would sometimes take years to overturn. We've overturned many of the decisions, but it would take years to do it. And we have to act quickly when it comes to illegal immigration. We have murderers, killers, we have drug dealers, we have what they've allowed to come into our country should never be forgotten. It should never be forgotten what they've done to our country. And we have to be able to act very quickly, and we're going to do that. Thank you.
Justice Amy Coney Barrett, sir, I know that you praised her and her opinion here in this case. She has taken some heat, though, from some of your supporters who have labeled her weak, a squishy, a rattled law professor. What is your take on that?
I don't know about that. I just have great respect for her. I always have. And her decision was brilliantly written today. From all accounts, yeah.
Transgender ruling, Mr. President. What would you say to Americans who fear that this is more and more concentration of power in the White House and the executive?
Well, this really brings back the Constitution. This is what it's all about, and this is really the opposite of that. I mean, the question is fine, but it's the opposite. The Constitution has been brought back.
Thank you so much, President Trump. Illegal crossings in the border are 0 now.
0. Does everyone hear that? 0.
Yes.
Trump 2028.
Do you intend, President Trump?
Who's that guy? I like him. He's working the cameras.
With this new reality, President Trump, in the border, do you intend to engage personally with leaders from South America, not only Central America, in order to tackle this situation in a brutal way, and if you have a perspective of meeting some presidents from South America, as Brazil, for example?
Well, you should, as an example, not South America, but NATO over the weekend.
Yeah.
They have great respect for our country now. They did things that nobody thought was possible. They took funding from 2% to 5%. Nobody thought they'd ever pay the 2%, and now they're paying the 5%. It's over $1 trillion more a year. Think of that, $1 trillion. Nobody thought that could happen. That's a different group of people, different countries. Yeah, but we get along with a lot of countries. We are respected again. Our country, the U.S., is respected again. Was not respected 6 months ago, I can tell you.
We ask about the big
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. President, you have a deadline coming up on trade in 2 weeks. Which countries, if
what?
any, on trade, on tariffs,
Yeah.
sir, which countries, if any, are close to agreements with the administration?
Well, that's an interesting question. We've made a deal with China. We've made a deal with probably 4 or 5 different countries. With the UK, it was a great deal for both. And we're in the process of making some others. But ultimately, in fact, Scott is here. And Howard Lutnick, these 2 guys have been doing an incredible job. And the people that work with them have been doing an incredible job. But, you know, we have 200 countries. You could say 200 countries plus. We can't do that. So at a certain point over the next week and a half or so, or maybe before, we're going to send out a letter. We talked to many of the countries, and we're just going to tell them what they have to pay to do business in the United States. And it's going to go very quickly. But some of the bigger countries, so India, I think we're going to reach a deal where we have the right to go in and trade. Right now it's restricted. You can't walk in there. You can't even think about it. We're looking to get a full trade barrier dropping, which is unthinkable. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen, but as of this moment, we've agreed to that, go into Indian trade. We're going to be trading in China. That's going to come a little bit down the road, but we're going to be trading in China. We have a lot of great things going, and we're getting along with countries, but some will be disappointed because they're going to have to pay tariffs. And we've taken in already hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. No inflation. The only problem we have is we have a Fed guy that doesn't understand what's happening, and it would be great if he'd lower the rate because we'd be able to borrow a lot cheaper. Yeah, go ahead, please. Why don't we keep it on this subject? This is such a big subject. You know what? Trade is so big, but this, I don't know, in a certain way, this might be bigger than trade. I think this is bigger than trade. Yes, please, go ahead.
I was wondering, though, if you could,
go ahead.
Sir, on the transgender ruling, the Supreme Court ruling that parents with religious objections can pull their kids out of public school lessons that use LGBTQ materials. Pam brought it up. Your reaction to that ruling today, sir?
I think the ruling was a great ruling, and I think it's a great ruling for parents. It's really a ruling for parents. They lost control of the schools. They lost control of their child. And this is a tremendous victory for parents. And I'm not surprised by it, but I am surprised that it went this far. It took us to bring life back to normal. So it's wonderful. It's parental. And I kept saying, we will give you back your parental rights. They were taken away, and this is a tremendous victory for parents. Yeah.
Mr. President, if you look at back at the last week, it's been extraordinary in terms of the action in the Middle East. You were at The Hague.
I'm wondering now, hell of a week, hasn't it?
I'm wondering now if you believe that Iran. I'm wondering now, sir, if you believe that Iran has given up its long history of ambitions with nuclear weapons, or what you would like to see from them to prove that they do, and what type of meetings is your administration looking for next week with Iran?
So Iran wants to meet. As you know, their sites were obliterated. They're very evil nuclear sites. They were, now has been proven. We had some fake news for a little while. The same people that covered the Hunter Biden laptop was from Russia. The same people that did 3 or 4 other Russia hoax.
But on their ambition.
No, wait, just listen. They came up with something that delayed the credit that our great pilots and these great what talent that was, and they hit it right down in the spot. 52,000 feet. Think of this dark, no moon, you couldn't see a thing, and they hit the refrigerator door, as they say. That's the size of a target, and overwhelmingly, and it's amazing what was done. We're the only ones that could have done it, and we took out the 2 of the other sites also. In addition to that, we finished them off. That was a very evil intention. I believe that, and again, time will tell, but I don't believe that they're going to go back into nuclear anytime soon. They spent over $1 trillion on nuclear, and they never got it together. And nothing was moved from the site, by the way. To do that is very dangerous. It's very, very heavy material. Those cars were most likely the cars of masons because they were pouring concrete at the top, at the hatch, as you know, the hatch going into the nuclear site. They wanted to reinforce it, and they had some masons there pouring concrete. By the way, that concrete was obliterated. It hit exactly at the concrete. It was, I don't think it had a chance to dry, but everything's down there. It's under millions of tons of rock. Please. Yes.
Your administration has said that El Salvador is one of the safest countries in the hemisphere. So why haven't you yet canceled temporary protective status for that country? Was it part of the deal?
Well, we'll take a look. We've had a great relationship with El Salvador. They have a fantastic leader. They built a massive prison system. And I don't know exactly why, but it's a hell of a system. And we bring people there, and when they go there, they don't get out. And frankly, when they hear they have to go there, they become very nice people. They become very nice people. It's a tough system, but it's a brilliant system, and it's a system done by a very, very good leader. We'll talk about El Salvador. A lot of respect.
Hey, real quick, I believe there are more questions coming on the Supreme Court ruling from today on the nationwide injunctions, so I'll keep playing this. I'm sorry for those who are here for just the Supreme Court ruling coverage. Some of the questions he took today were not about it, as you can see, but my understanding is that there's a few more coming. So I'll keep it going. If it keeps eventually with other questions, I'll ask you guys if you want me to keep playing it or not. But I'm going to play it a little longer. I think it went on a bunch longer, but I'm going to play it a little longer just to get some more of those Q&A for you.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. A question for you and then a question for the Attorney General. As you go into negotiations and talks with Iran, are you demanding not only that there would be no uranium production inside of Iran, but also that Iran would turn over all existing stockpiles of uranium?
Well, you know, we're a little early for that, but something like that, yeah, we'll do something like that. Let me say that I've been saying for 25 years, even as a civilian, you cannot let them have a nuclear weapon. And that's what happened. It's been obliterated. It would be years before they could ever get going. And I really think it's probably the last thing. They have to recover from a hell of a tough war.
Would you also be demanding that the IAEA have full rights to inspect in Iran?
Or somebody, yeah, or somebody that we respect,
And then
including ourselves.
And a question for both the President and the Attorney General. Under birthright citizenship, if this is implemented, who would be tasked with actually vetting citizenship? And how, like, would this be a situation where you have nurses and doctors checking for citizenship of parents, or?
This is all pending litigation. It's going to be decided in October by the Supreme Court, and we'll discuss that after the litigation.
If you have an undocumented baby, would that baby then be an enforcement priority?
The violent criminals in our country are the priority now. Let me put it in perspective. Today marked the 2,711th arrest in our country of TDA members, just TDA. Everyone in this room agrees they are one of the most violent criminal organizations in the world. And the Biden administration let them walk into our country for the last 4 years. 2,711 of them today have been arrested in our country. That is the priority of Donald Trump. That is the priority of this country, of Homeland Security, of all of our lawyers, of FBI. That's the priority. That will be discussed in October when the Supreme Court hopefully rules in our favor, and we're very confident of that. But you should all feel safer now that President Trump can deport all of these gangs, and not one district court judge can think they're an emperor over this administration and his executive powers, and why the people of the United States elected him.
I just might add one thing, and they used birthright citizenship, some of the worst people, some of the cartels, to get people into our country, just so you know. And again, I say, if you look at the end of the Civil War, the 1800s, it was a very turbulent time. If you take the end day, was it 1869 or whatever? But you take that exact day, that's when the case was filed. And the case ended shortly thereafter. This had to do with the babies of slaves, very, very obviously. And I think we're going to win. People I don't think they went about discussing it right. I came along and we looked and we said, wait a minute, this is wrong. We've been looking at birthright citizenship wrong for years, but they've used it. The cartels have used birthright citizenship to get very bad people in, and what Pam's doing and what Todd and everybody else, what they're doing at DOJ and all over, FBI, ICE, Border Patrol, these are incredible people. They're trying to keep our country safe, and they don't want to have people come in. This is just another way that they get illegal immigrants into our country, and in some cases, very, very bad ones. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your tax bill, if I could for a moment, senators are racing to rewrite parts of it right now after the Senate parliamentarian ruled that sections of it were outside of the process that they're using to get this through. Do you think that senators should respect the decisions of the parliamentarian? And what have you personally done in the last 48 hours to try and get Republican senators who are against the bill to a yes?
Well, look, it's a great bill. It's a massive tax cut. If it's not approved, your taxes will go up by 68%. Think of that, 68, a record, the highest in the history. The Democrats won't approve it only because politically it's so good for the Republicans. The Democrats aren't approving it. But think of what they're not approving. They're not approving border security. We've done a great job at the border, but we have to add some wall. We have to do various things. We have no money for that. We have no money for the border. We have no money for so many things. But if the Democrats, and it'd be interesting to see if we get any Democrat votes. We should. If I were a Democrat, I would absolutely, maybe Fetterman, because he seems to be the most sensible one lately. If I were a Democrat, I would vote for this bill all day long because it's tax cuts and so many other things that are common sense. They're basic things. I think they're doing fine. The parliamentarian's been a little difficult. And I would say that I disagree with the parliamentarian on some things, and on other ways he's been fine. But we'll have to see. It's a big issue. I will tell you this: if that bill doesn't pass, the country will get a 68% tax increase. So think of this: you're a Democrat and you vote against it. That means you're voting in favor, because essentially you're voting in favor of the largest tax hike in the history of our country. And you can't do that. In addition, we're cutting costs by $1.7 trillion, and it won't affect anybody. It's just fraud, waste, and abuse.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, a leading global economist just did a 180 and says your tariff plan, you may have outsmarted everybody with it. What is your message?
I love this. I love this question. This is the favorite. This is the best question I've ever been asked because I've been going through abuse for years on this. Because as you know, we're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, no inflation whatsoever.
But Mr. President, what is your message to critics who think your tariff plan will cause a recession?
I think they should go back to business school. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. I mean, we're taking in billions and billions of dollars from China and a lot of other countries. We took in, I had a call from somebody in the House and a high official. Sir, we have a problem. We don't know what to do. The books are a mess. I said, what do you mean by the books? The books, the money coming in. It's so terrible. I figured, oh boy, what's this? I don't like this question. I said, so what seems, there's so much money coming in and there must be some kind of an accounting mistake because we have hundreds of billions of dollars more money than we thought. I said, do me a favor, go check call me back. You have to call me back. Check the tariff column. He calls me back 2 hours later, says, you're right. We took in $88 billion in tariffs. They have so much money coming in. But more important than the money coming in, we have companies coming in, factories coming in, auto plants being built. AI is being built here instead of being built all over Europe and Asia. We have all of it. We have over $15 trillion, just about, Scott. I think we're right about that number. We went to Saudi Arabia. We went to Qatar. We went to UAE. Very smart people, very smart leaders, great leaders. And we took in $5.1 trillion just there without the tariffs. I mean, they also liked a thing called November 5th, November 6th, and November 7th. That was a very good little period of time. It's called the presidential election. You know, you used to have one-day election. Now you have it go over it. But even if you just took that little period, because it was pretty obvious it was going to be a landslide. And they like that, but they love the tariffs. I had Texas Instruments come in the other day, big company, and he said, we're putting in $60 billion into new plants and new equipment, new everything. Sir, you're going to keep the tariffs, aren't you? Because if I ever took the tariffs off, and we are going to absolutely keep it. And they're worried that somebody that, like this communist from New York, someday gets elected. I can't believe that's happening. That's a terrible thing for our country, by the way. He's a communist. We're going to go to a communistic state. That's so bad for New York. But the rest of the country is revolting against it. But if somebody got elected, they're afraid that if this was taken off, well, we're going to guarantee it's never going to be taken off. And again, we're taking in think of this, hundreds of billions of dollars. And they were all confused because they've never seen this before. You know, it's always the other way. We don't have enough money. So much money is coming in at levels that nobody's ever seen. But most importantly, we have factories being built, car plants being built, companies moving to our country like never before. If you look at 15 trillion, and that's only in a few months. You know, I haven't been here that long. Presidents, like the last one, was a disaster. He's the worst president in the history of our country, by the way. What he did on our border can never, ever be forgotten. To me, that's the worst of all the things. And he's done some terrible things, grossly incompetent. Nobody knew it was him because I don't think it was him. I think it was whoever was controlling the auto pen. But our country is doing great. And those leaders and other leaders, I just left, as you know, a large group of the most highly respected people. And that includes big countries. When you look at Germany and France and Spain, although Spain didn't come through, but they will. By the way, guaranteed they will. That was the only country that sort of tried to hold back on putting up the money. But just so you know, they said, it's unbelievable what's happened to the USA. You were a dead country. We didn't respect the country, the leader. You were dead as a doornail. One said to me, you went from being a dead country, you are right now the hottest country anywhere in the world. The whole world is talking about the USA, and everybody wants a part of it, and they're pouring into our country, and you're going to see those numbers. Thank you for that question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question about trade. Secretary Bessent has said that he hopes tariff deals with major partners will be done by Labor Day. So if some deals are not done by your July 9th deadline, will some countries' tariffs go back up, or will they stay where they are now?
Well, there's some countries that are used to ripping us off, to be honest with you. And I don't want to name them, but you sort of can name them. And they're so used to just, taking it billions and billions of, look, we had a trade deficit of more than $1 trillion. Think of a trillion, a trade deficit. That's because nobody cared. We cared a lot when, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariff. We had the greatest economy in history up until now. I think we're going to blow it away. But during my time, and especially prior to COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think we're going to blow it away now based on the kind of numbers that we're seeing. But some countries are very angry because they've been ripping us off for years. They've been making billions and billions of dollars. There was nobody to negotiate with. They could do whatever they want. They charged us tariffs, by the way, at numbers that we've never seen before. And we ended up losing much more than $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion a year on trade. And now they're being met with a force that's far greater than them, and they don't like it. So they're upset because instead of making, $5 billion, they're going to break even. Or they'll make a little bit. I want to be nice. They'll make a little bit. Oh, we'll make a little bit. It's a big difference. Yeah, please go. Go ahead. Red dress.
On the 2020 election, is there any more information on the special prosecutor? So many Americans still have questions about the 2020 election. And speaking of rogue judges, would you consider appointing somebody at DOJ maybe to investigate the judges that allowed for the political persecution of you, your family, and your supporters during the Biden administration?
I love you. Who are you?
I'm Kara from Lindell TV.
Well, it's just a very nice question. And it's not a setup. I have no idea who you are, but I appreciate that question. All I can say is we're not here for that. I hope so. I hope they're doing a thing because that election was rigged and stolen, and we can't allow that to happen. A lot of people tell me, sir, you just won the greatest election in the history of our country. You won at numbers that won all 7 swing states, won the popular vote, won everything. Sir, go on with your life. And many people that say that, good people, friends of mine, then you have people that say that same thing, go on with your life, but you have to find out what happened because you can't let that happen again. Look at what this lunatic did. Look at what he did. He opened our borders to people that were murderers, 11,888 to be exact, murderers. And we've captured many of those murderers, and we're bringing them back, or some of them are so dangerous that we don't even want to bring them back. We're afraid they're going to try and come back in. But he allowed people to come into this country, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, that's a mental institution on steroids, people from mental institutions, gang members, drug dealers, people, jails, being emptied out into our country. Venezuela emptied out almost its entire prison population into our country. But I don't want to blame them. Many countries have done that. The Congo, we have a great press conference coming up later, and it's the Congo and Rwanda. They were fighting for years, and it was machetes, it was vicious, it was as vicious, people's heads being chopped off. And I have a man who's very good in that part of the world, very smart, and put them together. And we're signing a peace treaty today. First time in many years they're going to have peace. And it's a big deal. We talk about Russia, and we're working that one. President Putin called up and he said, I'd love to help you with Iran. I said, do me a favor. I'll handle Iran. Help me with Russia. We got to get that one settled. And I think something's going to happen there. But we did some great work. India and Pakistan. That was going to be maybe nuclear. We did that. We did a lot of work. I don't know if there's ever been a president that's done much more. Serbia, Kosovo was going to go at it. Going to be a big war. I said, you go at it. There's no trade with the United States. They said, well, maybe we won't go at it. That's what happened with India and Pakistan. I was negotiating with both of them, and I said to Scott, I said to Howard, cancel all deals with India and Pakistan. They're not trading with us because they're in a war. They called back, what do? I said, look, you want to have trade with the United States, it's great. But you want to go and start using nuclear weapons on each other? We're not going to allow that. And they both agreed. Both have great leaders. They both agreed not to do it. So we did a lot, but I appreciate that question.
Sir, on peace deals, can I follow up with you? Sir, can I follow up on peace deals?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr.
Orange.
President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just speaking with Senator Ron Johnson on the One Big Beautiful Bill, and he says he really wants to get to yes for you and get this accomplished.
He does. He's a good man.
But he also said that he needs more time, and he is not certain that the July 4th deadline is
well,
possible.
then he's not such a good man.
Because there's too much work to do.
He's a good man. Ron
How
Johnson's
important-
doing a good job. He's very committed. Every Republican senator is committed. And, you know, you could have a couple of grandstanders, in all fairness. You could have somebody else. And it's very dangerous because our country would go from being the most successful country in the world to who knows what happens with a 68%, think of it, 68% tax increase. That was given by the Democrats because they like high taxes. I don't know what happened. You know, all my life, I'd grow up and I'd watch politicians talking. I'd say, oh, that's fun. And they were always saying, we will cut your taxes. We will cut your tax. I never heard it. They say, we will raise your taxes. And they elect people like this guy in New York that maybe has a chance. I find it hard to believe, but he maybe has a chance. They want to raise your taxes. So they want to see a 68% tax increase. That's more money than anybody could afford. You'd go into a depression if that ever happened. So I think there's a lot of pressure to get that approved.
President Trump, how important is the July 4th deadline to you? If the
It's important.
default
It's not the
deadline's
end
till
all.
August?
It can go longer, but we'd like to get it done by that time, if possible. And look, we have a lot of very committed people, and they feel very strongly about a subjects that you're not even thinking about that are important to Republicans. The problem we have is that it's a great bill. It's a popular bill, but we'll get no Democrats only because they don't want to vote for Trump. If that bill was their bill, oh, they would be so happy. It's so great for our military. It's great for everything. And they would normally vote, but because their hatred of Trump, they have Trump derangement syndrome at levels never seen before. And instead of voting for a tax cut, they're voting for a tax increase of 68%. They're voting to destroy Social Security, destroy Medicare, and destroy Medicaid. And we're voting to make them perfect and to make them better, make them stronger and better. They're going to destroy Medicaid and they're going to destroy Medicare, and Social Security will follow. If you vote for the Democrats, you're dead on those three things.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a related subject, many Democrats have said that they are not going to support crypto bills in Congress only because of you and your family's personal crypto ventures. And these votes are in some cases needed to pass. Are you open to the idea of pulling away from your personal crypto ventures just for the next few years if that helps get these crypto bills passed in the next few months?
Well, it's a very funny thing, crypto. So I became a fan of crypto, and to me it's an industry. I view it as an industry, and I'm president. And if we didn't have it, China would, or somebody else would, but most likely China. China would love to. And we've dominated that industry. It's a big industry, by the way. In fact, when the stock market went down recently, crypto and Bitcoin and all of that went down much less than anybody else as a group. And we've created a very powerful industry, and that's much more important than anything that we invest in. We invest in it, but really that was an industry that wasn't doing particularly well. I got involved with it a couple of years ago, and before the second term. I got involved before I decided to run. I only decided to run because I saw what was happening, and Biden was incompetent, and the administration was crooked and incompetent. And I was in Bitcoin then, not knowing if I was going to do it a third time. So it's become amazing. I mean, it's the jobs that it produces. And I notice more and more you pay in Bitcoin. I mean, people are saying it takes a lot of pressure off the dollar. And it's a great thing for our country. So I don't care about investing. You know, I have kids and they invest in different things. They do believe in it. But I'm president, and what I did do there is build an industry that's very important. And you know, if we didn't have it, China would. Okay.
Sir, Mr. President,
go ahead. With the glasses, gentlemen, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, are you going to cut funds in the sanctuary states, like for instance California, they keep supporting illegal immigration, and then these people work under
Yeah, we're
the
giving
table?
them a hard time.
And also, in a foreign policy question.
I mean, they don't have a governor in California. They have a man that wants to give away everything to people that nobody's seen before. If we didn't go into Los Angeles with the military, which did a fantastic job, but if we didn't go into Los Angeles bringing in the National Guard, I would have brought the military if it was necessary, because you have to. We have the right to. That was another thing upheld by the Supreme Court. But if we didn't go in with the National Guard and be strong and tough, you wouldn't maybe have Los Angeles. It would be like the rest of California, the rest of Los Angeles. They lost 25,000 houses in a fire. They should have lost none. You know, I sent the water down. I had to break into their water supply because they just refused to do it. They're crazy. There's something wrong with them. They have plenty of water. They don't have droughts or anything. They have plenty. We let it come down from the Pacific Northwest. They routed all the water out into the Pacific Ocean for environmental reasons, okay? And now you have 25,000 houses, none of which would have burned down if you had the water. They didn't have water. They didn't have water for the fire pumps. They didn't have water in the sprinkler systems that people put in. So the answer is we're going to work with governors. We're going to work with radical left Democrats and Democrats, and we're going to make it good for everybody. We'll have to stop the crime in those, in the case of the cities, I think I can say just about all cities with heavy crime are run by Democrats. Go ahead.
11
Yeah, with the glasses.
I'm with Iran.
Go ahead, yes.
International.
Yeah, go, no, the man behind you, yeah, please.
President Trump, Anthony Marshak from Amphibian Lebanon. I want to ask you regarding the threats posed by Iran's allies and proxies operating in the U.S. They were threatening your life. So what do you say about that? And regarding the Lebanon, because Hezbollah is as well part of Iran's allies, is there any time frame in Lebanon regarding disarming Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Yeah, Lebanon is a great place with brilliant people. You know, it was known for the professors and doctors and had an incredible history. And hopefully we can bring it back again. I just appointed a friend of mine who's Lebanese, and I didn't know he was Lebanese. I've known him for 20 years, very, very successful man. And I just appointed him. And I said, why would you want that? He said, because I was born there, I was raised there, I love it. I love it so much. I said, you know, it's very dangerous going to Lebanon as ambassador. And he said, that's what they say, but I don't care about danger. I mean, this is a guy that is just a very big business guy. He wants to give up his whole life to go to Lebanon because he believes in it so much. We're with Lebanon all the way. We'll try and straighten it out.
Your life as well. So what actions?
Threaten my life? Yeah, they have threatened. I get that throbbing feeling every once in a while. Get that throbbing feeling, but you know what? That's okay. This is a dangerous business. What I do is a dangerous business. You know, I tell the story of the car companies and different people and different professions you have. Race car drivers, as an example. 1/10 of 1% die. Bull riders, 1/10 of 1%. That's not a lot, but it's people die. When you're president, it's about 5%. If somebody would have told me that, maybe I wouldn't have run. Okay? This is a very dangerous profession. Yeah, please. By the way, so many questions. Should we keep this going, Pam? Or not? This is the opposite of Biden. Biden would take a half a question and he'd leave without answering it. Go ahead.
On Iran.
You tell me when it gets boring. Okay.
If Iran.
Are you from Iran?
No, I'm not from Iran. I'm from the UK. But if the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
Have you had any conversations?
Turned out to be unbelievable. But, you know, our incredible flyers and I call them the shots, these guys are unbelievable. Think, from 52,000 feet, they hit the equivalent of a refrigerator door. They actually hit it right in the center, so it's much smaller than that. And just bomb after bomb going deeper, deeper, blowing up. Incredible, incredible thing. I don't know if you heard the general. He was very impressive. Raisin Cain. You know, he's the one that beat ISIS for me. And he did it in a matter of weeks. And I was told it was going to take 4 or 5 years. And when I got this job, I always said, if I get this job, I'm going to put that guy as the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And Dan Cain, and he, when I heard his name was Raisin, his nickname is Raisin Cain. I said, you got to be kidding. So I liked him right from the beginning. But he knocked out ISIS in a time that nobody ever thought possible. And when this attack was completed and so successful, I said, now I know how you knocked out ISIS so quickly. But we have the best people, we have the best equipment in the world. You know, I rebuilt the military during my 4 years, during my other term. We have the best equipment in the world. The problem is we gave away, you know, a lot of it, but small, relatively speaking. We gave a lot of it away to Afghanistan. Shouldn't have happened. That just shows how incompetent they were. They gave all that equipment away, billions and billions of dollars worth. Shouldn't have happened, but that was small compared to what we have. Now we have a great military with great people. Okay. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, congratulations. A couple of very different questions. One is Rwanda, 1994. As you grew up in New York, we all knew how horrific those attacks were. Congratulations on that treaty. There are talks that perhaps...
That's going to take place today at 3 o'clock in the Oval Office. We're going to have a signing with Rwanda and the Congo. So I'm a little out of my league in that one because I didn't know too much about it. I knew one thing. They were going at it for many years and with machetes. It is one of the worst wars that anyone's ever seen. And I just happened to have somebody that was able to get it settled. I mean, just a brilliant person who is very comfortable in that part of the world. It's a very dangerous part of the world. I said, are you uncomfortable there? People are being killed. School children are being raided and killed. And I don't even want to say how, but as viciously as I've ever heard. Are you uncomfortable? No, that's the part of the world that I know. Very comfortable. Was able to get them together and sell it. And not only that, we're getting for the United States a lot of the mineral rights from the Congo as part of it. They're so honored to be here. They never thought they'd be coming to. Look, this is a very tough part of the world. They never thought, they were just telling me, they never thought they'd ever be coming to the White House. And they're so honored. And so we're going to give them a great big reception. But that's after many years of fighting. It's a great thing. That's at 3 o'clock, I believe.
Sir, are you concerned at all about secret nuclear sites in Iran? You talked about maybe just
secret nuclear sites?
Yes, that there might be some.
Not really. Can I tell you? They're exhausted. And Israel's exhausted too. And I dealt with both of them. And they both wanted it settled, both of them. And we did a great job, but they're exhausted. The last thing they're thinking about right now is nuclear. You know what they're thinking of? They're thinking about tomorrow, trying to live. It's such a mess. It's such a mess. The place was bombed to hell. And no, I'm not worried about it at all. And I'm putting out a little statement. I'm going to respond to the Ayatollah's statement yesterday that we won the war. Oh, God, we won the war. And I said, look, you're a man of great faith, a man who's highly respected in his country. You have to tell the truth. You got beat to hell. And Israel was beat up too. They were both beat up. And it was a great time to end it. It was quick. They got the hate out. There was a lot of hate, a lot of hate. It would be great if they didn't have that hate. But the last thing they're thinking about is nuclear weapons right now. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Iris Tao with NTD Research Media with the Epoch Times. Thank you so much for doing this. It's very refreshing for all of us here.
It's a good group.
In this room.
It's refreshing.
Very refreshing. Yes, we haven't had
Probably.
this in, for the past
I understand what you mean.
So thank you so much for coming out here.
Other
to talk
than
to
Caroline's done a great job.
Yes,
You're referring to the past administration, not to Caroline, right?
Yes. Back to the ruling today, if you don't mind. So you have always talked about winning for the American people.
Right.
How do you think today's ruling will enable you to further deliver for American families and workers across the country, not only when it comes to immigration, but also when it comes to trade, energy? What actions are you most eager to move forward
Well, I
with
think
now?
taking power away from these absolutely crazy radical left judges is a tremendous, this is such a big day. This is such a big day. It's like, it's sort of sad because we're doing the signing at 3 o'clock, and this may very well dominate the signing of a big war that was going on and really affecting the continent of, think of it, the entire continent of Africa was being affected, and we're settling that war today, and this will probably be a headline. But this is a very big moment, and it gives power back to people that should have it, including Congress, including the presidency. And it only takes bad power away from judges. It really doesn't take power. It takes bad power, sick power, and unfair power. And it's really going to be, this is a very monumental decision. Yeah, please.
Yes, President, thank you very much. On July 9th, is that July 9th date set for tariffs to snap back? Or could there be a...
We can do whatever we want. We could extend it. We could make it shorter. I'd like to make it shorter. I'd like to just send letters out to everybody. Congratulations, you're paying 25. 5%. He doesn't want. He's a much nicer person than I am. Go ahead. You finish it up.
Who are you considering for the Federal Reserve then? And are you speeding up that process? I see Secretary.
Oh, he's terrible. He's terrible. I mean, I have a list of things. We're like 38 on the list. We pay, Cameroon and different places are paying the same as us. Because, you have somebody sets a rate at 4% or 4.5%. It's hard to go out and say we should be paying 1% when you have your so-called experts doing that. And the sad part is, as per the question that you asked about tariffs, we've had the tariffs and we have less inflation than we had before. What we have is a hell of a lot more money, a hell of a lot more income, and we shouldn't be paying a rate like that. In other words, when we pay a rate, I'll tell you, each point is the equivalent of $300 billion. So if we had it down 3 points, because I think we should be at 1, you have Switzerland is at 0.25. In other words, 25% of 1%. And they're the number 1 right now. But we should be the number 1. And soon you're going to have, I think, you're going to have where the people will pay will pay, like we had a few years ago, where you put up money, you loan money, and I mean, you actually, instead of paying, you get paid. I love that. I don't know if it's any good, but I love it, where you put up money and you get paid. But we should be in a category, so we should be at the top of the list, not toward the bottom of the list. But we have a man who's not a smart man, and he probably has Trump derangement syndrome. And he's just not a smart person. What he's doing, though, he's hurting us for years to come. Because if we borrow money at 2 points higher than we should be paying, that's $600 billion. Wouldn't you say those numbers are about right, Scott? So it's 2 points would be about 600, actually more than that, but about $600 billion, all because the guy doesn't want to lower the rates. He's doing the service, a very disservice. And then he goes up and talks about, I'd like to see costs come down. He gets up and he does his little thing for 5 minutes, and he goes out and he goes back to the beach. He goes, I'd like to see costs come down. Well, he could lower the interest cost by $900 billion a year. All he has to do is lower rates. And everybody's saying, I was watching some of the business shows today, and they're saying, Trump's right. He should really be cutting. The country's doing well. We have no inflation. Now, despite him, we're doing great. But if we got the rates down, we would be a rocket ship. So I think that'll be it. And I just want to thank everybody. This is a really big day. We've had a big week. We've had a big week. We've had a lot of victories this week. NATO was a tremendous victory. The war was a tremendous. Look, we were talking about this for 30 years, about Iran being nuclear. And all I said is it will not be nuclear, and it's not going to be nuclear. And I want to give credit to a lot of people, most importantly to our great military. Boy, they put out that fire. Once that happened, once those bombs got dropped, that war was over. That war was over. But I just want to compliment them. Incredible. The general and all of his generals. Pete Hegseth was great. They were all. And now I want to compliment Pam. A lot of genius went into this. People, if you don't say it exactly right, if the Supreme Court doesn't get it because it's incorrectly spoken about, and that happens. A lot of cases are lost because they don't say the right words. But I want to correct. She's going to go down as a great attorney general. I may change my mind about that. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll have to call and say I was only kidding. She's going to go down as a great attorney general. This was a tremendous win, and we've had tremendous wins, but this was a tremendous win today. So I just want to congratulate you and Todd and your whole staff. Very brilliant people, and we can't forget John Sauer.
That's right.
Who is with. There's a medical emergency within his family, so he's taking care of that, and we said absolutely. So I just want to thank everybody very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. I know the last part of that was not about the Supreme Court ruling, but people watching in our viewers seem to want to see it, so I kept it going. My sense of the viewer opinion was that the viewers wanted to keep it playing, so I let it run so you could hear the rest of it. We're going to talk a little bit more about that Supreme Court ruling. We did a bunch of coverage of it earlier before the press conference. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it right now. We'll take a few more comments on the air. But if you missed the coverage, You can go back and rewind it from the beginning. So we'll do a quick summary of what's going on. I have a couple quick things to say about it, and also I want to take a few more comments about it. But the basic idea of what happened is that, hold on, the basic idea of what happened is, hold on a second here. Oops. That the Supreme Court has ruled that in nationwide injunctions, that a lot of nationwide injunctions where a federal judge would say of a president's policy, that policy is unconstitutional, therefore we're freezing the policy across the country. It can't be applied anywhere in the country while the case is making its way through the courts. That's happened a bunch under President Trump. Also happened a number of times under President Biden and other recent presidents, I believe, where a president will issue an executive order, and then soon after a district judge will say, nope, you can't do that anywhere in the country. Because we believe it's going to be ruled unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court has said that today that those kind of injunctions are not constitutional because district judges were exceeding their constitutional powers, and they didn't actually have the power to freeze the policy for the whole country. Now, the ruling was not that there can never be a nationwide injunction. I'm not a legal expert, but I do know that it only applies to certain cases of these injunctions. But there were several injunctions, I believe 3 different ones, that three different judges had ruled that President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order, where that order said that if you have a child who's born on U.S. soil, if neither parent is a citizen or a permanent resident, that child is not an American citizen. So before President Trump's executive order for over 100 years, it's been understood that the Constitution guarantees that any child born on American soil, except for some exceptions like if the parents are diplomats, but basically any child born on American soil by virtue of that becomes a citizen, even if the parents are here illegally. And President Trump issued this executive order back in January that said no, if neither parent is here legally, is neither parent is a citizen or a permanent resident, they are a legal permanent resident, the child is not an American citizen. So he issues that order, and 3 different judges, I believe, issued nationwide injunctions that said, nope, we believe that policy is unconstitutional. We're therefore going to freeze it for the entire country as the case makes its way through the courts. And the Supreme Court today said that all of those injunctions against the birthright citizenship policy, those were all unconstitutional injunctions. The judges actually didn't have the right to issue those injunctions. So now we could have a case where the Supreme Court did not rule on the executive order. They did not rule on whether President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order is unconstitutional. They're maybe going to do so next year. I know Pam Bondi said they're going to rule in October. I don't believe the Supreme Court has said firmly that they're going to rule in October, but they very well may do it in the next session. But for now, those nationwide injunctions against this executive order has gone away. So as a result, we could have a case starting in 30 days from now. It could be the case in the United States that in some states, President Trump's executive order about birthright citizenship goes into effect, and in other states it doesn't. We could have a situation 30 days from now where if a baby is born to, say, 2 people in the country illegally, that baby, whether that baby is a citizen might depend on which state they're born in. Now, it won't keep going like that, because eventually, probably there's going to be a Supreme Court ruling that settles the question for everybody once and for all. But until there is such a ruling, until it does make its way through the court system, we could have a case where in certain parts of the country, a baby born in one part of the country will be a citizen, a baby born in another part of the country will not be a citizen. So that could happen. And this nationwide injunctions ruling applies to injunctions about other presidential policies as well. But there are some, it gets quite complex, because there still could be nationwide injunctions that are applied to Trump's executive order. And you might say, well, how could that be? Didn't the Supreme Court today say there can be no nationwide injunctions? No, they said there can be no nationwide injunctions in certain cases. So, for example, one way there could be a nationwide injunction that's constitutional is if there's a class action lawsuit. I know this sounds kind of very, very technical, but for example, The Economist had an article about this, and they talked about this, and they said a class action lawsuit is where one or several named plaintiffs or an organization sues on behalf of similarly situated plaintiffs across America. So it's the people or organizations that file the lawsuit. They say, well, we're filing the lawsuit on behalf of ourselves and lots of other people like us across the country. So it's a class action lawsuit. For example, the class might be all pregnant women without legal status. And if there is such a lawsuit, my understanding is that if there is such a lawsuit and it comes out, and the judge in such a lawsuit then issues a nationwide injunction against the executive order, then the ruling today doesn't impact that kind of nationwide injunction. And the ruling doesn't say that a judge can't do that in that kind of case. Okay, so there's that. And also another way that there still could be a nationwide injunction against President Trump's executive order even after today is, and this is something talked about by The Economist in their article today. They said a state could argue that the only type of injunction that eases their burden is one that blocks the executive order nationwide. So I think 22 different states filed lawsuits against Trump's executive order. And how The Economist explains it, they say that the cost and administrative burden of tracking the immigration status of babies traveling around the country could make anything less than a comprehensive bar on Mr. Trump's policy unworkable for the 22 states seeking relief. So I guess what the states are saying, if I understand this right, is there are 22 states, I believe. So say you're a state and you filed suit against Trump's executive order, and the judge has said, yes, you're right, state. You're right. Trump's executive order is constitutional. Is unconstitutional. I think I can't make a nationwide injunction, but I can say that in your state, his executive order will not apply. Well, that means, let me think this through. If a baby is born in that state, is the idea that if a baby comes to the state, they have to now figure out. The idea is that it's going to be difficult for that state to function if other states have different policies on whether a baby becomes a citizen or not. I think that's the overall issue. And so the way they put it in The Economist is the cost and administrative burden of tracking the immigration status of babies traveling around the country. So I guess the idea is if a baby is brought to your state, it might be too much of a burden for states to have to figure out if those babies are citizens or not, because you got to figure out what state they were born in, maybe. But the overall point is a judge could, in theory, decide that the only way, if a state has sued over this, over President Trump's executive order, and the state, and a district judge feels that state, they've made a good case, the district judge may decide, well, the only way to really make things right for this state is to have it banned across the country. Because otherwise, if it's not banned across the country, if this executive order goes into place in some parts of the country, it's just going to make things too difficult for that state. Even if the executive order is not in force in that state, practically speaking, it'll just make things too difficult. Therefore, I announce that the injunction applies to the entire country. There could be a case like that. So I know it's confusing, but my point is, there are these alternate ways in which a judge might issue a nationwide injunction against Trump's executive order on birthright to citizenship or one of his other policies. There are a number of ways, like in a class action lawsuit or this other way I just talked about, which are not forbidden by the Supreme Court ruling today, if that makes sense. This Supreme Court ruling does not say that there are no constitutional nationwide injunctions against the president's policies. They just say a bunch of them that have been considered constitutional are no longer constitutional, including the ones that so far have been issued against the birthright citizenship executive order. As confusing as it all sounds, I've been trying to make it as simple as possible, but it's just not simple. Let's see here, blah, 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 blah. And, this has been, these nationwide injunctions by particular judges have been a big topic of debate among some in the country in recent years. President Biden had a number of policies that were ruled that couldn't go through, that couldn't be implemented because a judge issued a nationwide injunction. And some people say, well, one judge shouldn't be able to set the rule for the entire country, and maybe there's certain judges who are pro-Democrat or pro-Republican, and all you got to do is go to that particular judge, and if they issue it, then it applies to the entire country. But somebody else might say, well, what happens now if you have a president come in and they pass and the president issues an executive order that's obviously unconstitutional? Does every single person or every single party affected by that have to file their own lawsuit so that new presidential policy doesn't apply to them? If it's obviously unconstitutional, can't a judge just say, well, we're gonna pause it for the entire country while it's making way for the courts? Or does every single or in the time before the courts have issued a final ruling on it, does the president just get to impose that policy on a bunch of the country? So there's arguments on both sides. It's a controversial topic, but that's just a little bit of an overview, and I know it's complex, and I am not a legal expert. I'm just trying to give you the basic sense of what's at stake here. All right, I'm going to take a few. Oh, Callie Voltaire, who is a legal expert, she says that class action lawyers are winning big today because there's going to be a lot more class action lawsuits filed, I guess you're saying. Let's see here. And I do have pinned in the chat the actual ruling with both the Supreme Court majority ruling and the dissent by Justice Sotomayor. I think there might be multiple ruling documents and dissent documents in there, but the file is there. You can read it. It might seem pretty technical because it is, but I do have it pinned in the chat for you. All right, so let me read some of your comments on this, and I wish I had the expertise in the background to get into this more technically, but I don't. And it's confusing, I know. But trying to just give you the basic idea. Hopefully you've gotten some sort of basic idea of what's at stake here. But there are a number of Trump policies that have been, that judges have issued nationwide injunctions against so far in the last few months, which have prevented them from being put into effect. And now that a number of these nationwide injunctions have been struck down, it could be the case that some of these policies are actually put into place even in some of the country, like perhaps the birthright citizenship policy may be in 30 days or more. Okay, and let me just say one more time, this will apply to Democratic presidents in the future as well as Republican. So maybe in the future there's a Democratic president, and it makes it harder for judges to issue nationwide injunctions against the Democratic president's policies. Okay, let me take some comments here. Sorry, I know it's quite complex. Just Aussie says, let the forum shopping begin. Well, forum shopping was something that was seen as encouraged by the previous nationwide injunction system, because all you had to do is find one area where the judges in that area were, one district where the judges were believed to be more sympathetic to you, and you could get that judge to issue a nationwide injunction. But now maybe will there be forum shopping for districts where you might have a better shot with a class action lawsuit or something? I don't know. Maybe the forum shopping issue is still in effect. Let's see here. Audrey Burbank says it's very confusing. Yes, it is confusing. And again, I don't even understand the ins and outs of it because I'm not a lawyer or a legal expert. BLS Doom Crew says President can set an executive order and the Supreme Court will either approve if it's lawful or not. Yes, that can indeed happen, and it's expected to happen. It's expected to happen with the birthright citizenship order. But suppose it takes the Supreme Court till next year to rule on President Trump's executive order. And just suppose next year the Supreme Court says, you know what, President Trump's executive order is unconstitutional. Well, at that point, we could have had a whole year where in a lot of the country, that executive order was in effect. Yes, ultimately, this ruling today did not limit the power of the court system to ultimately rule that a president's executive order is unconstitutional. But it does maybe give presidents the power to, even if their executive order turns out to be ruled unconstitutional, they can still put it into effect in parts of the country, maybe for months or years. Some people asked about, there's some unconfirmed reports. There were some, once again, hey, unconfirmed reports about something going on in Iran that some social media posts are posting about. What do you know? I've never had that situation before. There are a few social media accounts that are claiming there were some explosions in Iran. I have not seen that confirmed by any kind of news outlet that I would consider reliable on that. I checked Iranian state media. It said nothing. I checked an Israeli news account that I check a lot for these kind of things. It said nothing. Even if it did, so I am not aware of any kind of reporting that I would consider reliable that there's some Israeli attack going on in Iran that would break the ceasefire. If I become aware of it, I will certainly let you know. But I find the claims about it I've seen on social media, I do not find particularly reliable or well sourced at the moment. So that's what I'll say about that. If I hear it from sourcing I consider more reliable, I will certainly let you know. Let me remind you that there were several times during the past couple weeks when many, many social media accounts made the same claim about something going on in Iran that actually was false. So just because a few social media accounts are saying it doesn't mean it's true. If I do hear more about it and I find it reliable, I will certainly let you know. Sunset Secondary, what is it? Says, what does this ruling mean for lower court's power? It makes it harder for a lower court, a district court judge, to issue a nationwide injunction. They can't do it in a bunch of cases where they could before. So you will have numerous cases before where a district court judge said, I don't think this policy of a president is constitutional. The courts haven't ruled on it yet, but for now, I'm going to freeze the policy nationwide. There are a lot of cases like that where they can no longer do that. Okay, let's see here. Is there anything else I want to mention about this? Let's see here. I want to take a couple more comments here. Hang on a moment. Oh, thanks to Nicola. Nicola also, our viewer Nicola sent me an article that Politico wrote, and it talked about loopholes in the Supreme Court win today, if you call it a win for Trump. And it talked about how if somebody files a class action lawsuit against a presidential policy, in that case, a nationwide injunction is in theory possible. It talked about if a state is the one filing a lawsuit against a presidential policy, in that sort of case, there could be a nationwide injunction issued, which is legal. And they gave a third possibility too, which is if the president's policy, what is it here? If a lawsuit against a presidential policy involves a law called the Administrative Procedure Act, then in such lawsuits, nationwide injunctions are still allowed. Again, I know it's complex, but those are three different cases where nationwide injunctions would still, in theory, be allowed by district court judges. The title of that article on Politico, if you want to read it, is Trump Adversaries See Silver Linings in His, quote, Monumental Supreme Court Win. Okay, well, oh, thanks, by the way, to EJ Rod and Casual Killer for subscribing, and Jay Drabble on Twitch. Thanks for your support. And also TilbTX for your support on Twitch, and Jenny Zio and Big Dog Gaming. And also shout out to Callie Voltaire for the gift memberships. That's so nice of you, Callie Voltaire. Enoch123, our member. Jenny Girl Jen, our member. Teshera 2250, Jake 6262, and Susan Stater, our member as well. Thanks for your support. Wow, this stream has been longer than I thought it would be. I think it's time to wrap it up. It feels like we've just scratched the surface. We just scratched the surface, guys. Really. So, but, I mean, as I said earlier, I'm sure you can find legal experts who have social media channels who are doing deep dives on this, and I would encourage you to check those out. Maybe if I have time, I'll check them out myself. I encourage you to check them out if you want to know more. But just know it's with these Supreme Court rulings, they're complex legal rulings. Oh, thanks, Paul Tissue. I appreciate that. Okay, so I think for now we've done what we came here to do. as I tried my best. I tried my best. But anyways, I really appreciate you guys. Those of you who stuck around for this stream, more technical than our usual stream, a little more dry than our normal stream, but I appreciate those of you who tuned in. And a number of you have been writing in with your comments and sending me links and stuff. Thanks for that. Thanks for letting me letting you read your comments on the air. Thanks for those of you who participated in the chat. But appreciate you tuning in. So certainly it's important. It's an important ruling that restricts the ability of district court of lower court judges to put nationwide freezes on presidential policies, but lots of complicating factors. Also, I think it's not really known how much it's going to impact things in the future, because maybe there's other ways, workarounds like the class action suits that'll start to be used more to get these kind of nationwide injunctions. So it's not like the experts even know totally how this is all going to play out in the future. It's not even clear how it's going to play out with President Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship in the future. It's not even clear what's going to happen in the courts in the next month, and whether in some parts of the country that executive order will come into effect, at least temporarily. It's just not clear right now, so we'll have to see. Could be a very interesting situation if it does in part of the country, though, and not in other parts of the country. Okay, so if there's more big breaking news tonight, we'll come on the air and cover it. We cover all kinds of live breaking news here without an agenda. And you can subscribe or follow if you want the channel, Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda here. Turn on the notifications for the channel because I don't know in advance when big news is going to happen, but we do have a notification system where you can sign up and you'll get sent a notification whenever we go live. It's really reliable. It works really well. We do it through Discord. It's easy to sign up. The mods will post a link to the notifications in the chat. You can find them in the description of this video on YouTube and Facebook as well. So sign up for the free notifications, and I will post updates about big news updates when I'm not on the air on my X account, which is @Lookner. @Lookner on X. That's where I post about breaking news. @LOOKNER. Follow me over there on X for breaking news updates. And I want to shout out our moderators. They are so awesome. They're the best. They're the ones keeping things civil and respectful in our chat, and they're awesome. People like Ruth over there on YouTube. So sorry, I guess there's this issue with YouTube today where people's screen names are messed up. So I know that's impacting our moderators and a lot of our viewers. Nothing to do with me. Hopefully they get that fixed. Beth, thanks for moderating. Janet B, Beth Mythical, Ruth, Roberts, May Queen, and our other YouTube moderators, thank you so much. Over there on Twitch, Bot King Sentient, thanks again for being a new moderator there. LB Prairie Dawn, Sarah, and our other Twitch moderators on Facebook. Kay Lowry Body is moderating right now. Thanks so much, Kay. Margaret Riley's been over there. And let's see here. Our other Facebook moderators and Linda Belk, Larry, Misha, moderate for us there on X. Thank you so much for doing that. And let's see. We do have a free chat where you can chat with other viewers when we're not on the air. It's our Discord chat. Check out the Discord chat. It's free, and it's the same link as the notifications link. So the link for the free notifications, you can also check out the Discord chat there. A lot of our viewers like doing the Discord chat. Check that out if you want. And thanks to our Discord mods for all you do as well. Thanks, Discord mods. Another good way to find out when we're live, I always post on the Agenda Free TV X account when we go live, @Agenda Free TV. Those of you on X, follow over there. And also I post updates about the channel there. And also those of you on YouTube, if you are a YouTube viewer, I would suggest turn on the YouTube notifications. But it's a little confusing how to do that. So if you want to turn on the YouTube notifications, here's what you got to do. You have to subscribe to the channel. Then you have to click the notifications bell, activate the bell, and choose all notifications. So make sure if you're subscribed on YouTube, make sure you got the bell checked and you've chosen all. Okay. Ruth says, come on, join us on Discord. It's so much fun. Hey, also shout out to our Facebook subscribers who support the channel over there, like Christy Claft, Erin Van S., Jennifer Ellers, Sharon Klassen-Goslin, Shannon Davis Hughes, Margaret Riley and Kay Lowry Body, Robert Rial II, and all of our other, and thanks Margaret for moderating. If I didn't thank you before, thank you, Margaret, and all of our other Facebook subscribers. Susan Priest Buchner, thanks for supporting the channel. Christy Claff, thanks to all of our subscribers there. Thanks to our Twitch subscribers, like Shaggy in Wall Street, The Trash Flower, Nick Knack, and Nick Knack 613, Real Pew Pew, Bot King Sentient, thank you for subscribing, and Jack Overson 1, and EJ Rod 31, Casual Killer, Jenny Gio, thanks for subscribing, and there's a few more here I want to shout out. Let's see here. Devil Doc, thank you. Sarah, Spirit 14, Army Vet 007, Artful Nothing, Crazy Like Fox News, Holistic, Gina Pina. Thanks all the Twitch subscribers. I really appreciate it. And also Jax Haku as well. And our YouTube members like Cam. Some of your names are probably different today because of the weird thing on YouTube. Well, the names have been switched. Zane, Isaiah, Evelyn in Maine, Waltham, CAC813, David Curtis, Jerry Kovacs, Paul Tissue, thanks for being members on YouTube. Bill W, Swan Shovlin, Beat Monster, Pat W, Jesse Video, Beam Me Up, Sevenfold, Dream 20. Thank you, Chris Lee UK, Wickedest Witch, Jenny Girl, Jen, Callie Voltaire, and thanks again, Cal. Oh, did I thank everybody? I think I thanked all the donors individually, but I want to thank you collectively. Thanks so much for everybody who donated to the channel. It is so nice of you, Callie Voltaire and everybody else. I think I got it all you individually, but that is what allows the channel to exist. So your support is what makes this channel be, but what allows this channel to be. So thank you so much for your support. If you ever want to donate, you can go to agendafree.tv. But thanks so much, everybody who donated. Again, I think I named everybody during the stream, so thank you. TJ Adams, thanks for being a member. At Dream20, Dennis Michael Kennedy, William Cromer, our YouTube members, Suki G, Etimea, Esther F, Chaz Martin, The Knight's Palace, MS Red Girl, Mentally Stimulated, Confidence in God, Maya Moon Goddess. Thank you, members. I really appreciate it. And all of our other viewers out there, just to name a few, Bonsai Garden, Adina Monroe, Princess Kitty, and all of our other viewers. Thanks for watching the stream. Martha Crawford, thanks for being a subscriber over there on Facebook. Thanks, Paula Thompson, Brendan Brumond, Melissa Terry for watching. All right, guys, we're wrapping it up. So we have been covering, or trying to cover, I've been attempting to cover this Supreme Court ruling in some sort of way. But that is it for now. More news when more big news happens. That's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. And thanks also to Fade to Bolivia, a couple more people, and Ane Wow Loon Jakar, and all of our other viewers. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.